Can we find our seats, please? The sounds of silence. There we go. Thank you. Good morning. As I stood in the hallway this morning and realized that over all the years in this business and the 10 years we've been doing this, how many great friends that each of us have that are present in this room of 1,000 people. So let's give each other a hand for that. For those of you who may not know, I'm Greg Four. I'm a partner in RV business, and I'll be serving as your host today. We're certainly pleased with the record-breaking crowd coming on the heels of our last Power Breakfast only 6 months ago. Bravo to all for your support, for your attendance, and what has become an important event for our area and for our industry. In the short time since the last breakfast, there's no shortage of events and changes that have impacted our business and our lives. Geopolitical complications have proven to impact not only the peace in Ukraine and Russia, but our business, our nation's economy, and most of us as a global economy as well. And while abated to some extent, we continue to have supply chain issues and problems that forecasters indicate will remain with us throughout the year and maybe longer. We have seen new inventory levels at dealerships improve dramatically since November, and there is a likely there may be a likely product mix issue in that, and there's certainly some motorized shortages due to chip manufacturing. But other than that, it seems like we're no longer selling from an empty shelf. Inflation continues to erode the wallets of all Americans and borders on impacting demand for all products. And even more so, the demand for leisure products and services. The federal published inflation rate is well below what we've experienced in our industry. So if anyone knows the impact of inflation, it's our customers, our suppliers, our vehicle manufacturers, and our dealers. And of course, 2022 is a midterm election year, which we'll hear more about as the morning progresses. And yet through all of this and other concerning issues, our customer, the RV user, continues to support the lifestyle and purchase and use products in very good numbers as shipments and retail registrations remain at very high levels. In fact, through March, retail registrations were, I believe, the third highest in history. It remains a good time to be in the RV industry and in the RV business. As we begin today, I would be remiss if I didn't let everyone know that our schedule has changed just a little bit. Marcus Lemonis, Phil Ingracia, and Pete McCown all have regretfully withdrawn from the Power Breakfast for a variety of personal reasons and have asked that we pass along their best wishes. In addition, we learned late yesterday afternoon that Senator Young, because of his needed presence at the U.S. Senate, could no longer catch flights to Indiana. We were able to put together a live video link, so he will be with us to give his presentation via live video in his normal time slot. Our morning will start with a couple of short greetings from local dignitaries, Elkhart's mayor and Indiana Senator Pro Tem, President Pro Tem, and the Chief Program Officer from the Community Foundation. Because of the midterm election and the troubling number of economic and political issues, this morning we'll spend time hearing from those who represent us at the federal level with both Indiana senators and our District 2 Representative, Jackie Wolorski. We look forward to hearing their thoughts and thank them for their participation, for the work they do on behalf of our industry and on behalf of our country. Then taking the stage is well-known economist and analyst from the Freedom Foundation, new to most of us, Stephen Moore, who will share his insight regarding the country and world's economic condition and the direction that may impact our businesses going forward. And then after a short break, we'll move on to industry updates from RVIA, RV Trader, and KOA Campgrounds. And then nearing the end, we'll get an update from RVDA before we have our dealer panel. So before we get started, I'd like to recognize and thank our sponsors without whom this event could not take place. Please hold your applause until I've finished. In alphabetical order, they are Airxcel, Cummins, Dometic, Forest River, KOA, RVIA, Spartan Chassis, Thor Industries, Wells Fargo, and Winnebago Industries. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage a native of Elkhart, an outstanding athlete through college who built an outstanding career in Chicago before returning to his roots in Elkhart. He always strived to help his fellow man through community involvement and leadership. Please welcome the Mayor of Elkhart, Mr. Rod Roberson.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. Good morning, everyone. Morning. I know that sounded a little like church, right? Good morning, everybody. This isn't church, but it is Elkhart. I am extremely excited to be able to greet you this morning for a couple of reasons. And when they give me a mic, they tell me a couple of remarks. It gets kind of scary, though, when they let me go. But I feel like I'm one of you, and I know I am. And this is why. I entered your industry between 9/11 and the Great Recession. Developed a relationship with Coachman, worked for Tom Corson. Oh my goodness. Mike Bear, Mike Turlip, Chuck Green, those are all names, right? To some of you who have probably been in the industry for a while, they know them. But to those of you that have entered the industry 20 years or so, because it was about that time, may not. But one of my vivid memories of the industry was the relationships, as Greg just mentioned, that everybody had, and I have as well. When I came in, I got stopped many times, not because I'm mayor, but because Greg is right. I was born and raised here, went to Elkhart Central, graduated, went to Northwestern, played a little ball, worked in consumer products for many years. But the experience that I had in this industry was one that galvanizes why I believe that there was no way that I could understand my job right now unless I understood you. I was asked right before I was elected, what is the best quality of the people of Elkhart? And I said, it's resiliency. The people here are so resilient because of this industry. And back in the time I was with you, folk were they were prognosticating the demise of the RV industry. Or saying how bad it got after 9/11 that it wasn't ever going to come back again. Well, I remember Spirit of America. I'm sorry, that's a Coachman product, but that's what I remember. I remember a few other things, and we started to really ramp up. And then the recession hit. Same type of prognosticators. The demise of the industry was in front of us. But look who's standing today. Look who's standing today. Look at this place. Never believe that this industry has met its end, no matter what someone says. Never believe that our community doesn't respect, understand, and have a relationship with you in a way that would be standing right here with you. I didn't understand that when they told me that when you go up to a show in Green Bay, you would get just a little bit of snow the third week of January. It was up to my chest, and it was the spring show. And thousands of people were in the arena buying units. I didn't believe when I came out of my hotel in Traverse City that those tracks that I saw outside of my room were big dogs. No, they were bear tracks. Prior to everything in Vegas stays in Vegas, there was everything in Louisville. Yeah, you guys know, don't you? So for us to understand who we are, we got to understand where we came from. And I'm doing all I can in the city to walk beside you, to support you, to do the things necessary to make the city of Elkhart, the city with a heart, I got it on my heart, on my label here, the kind of city that steps up and supports an industry that has brought us to where we are. So I want to thank you. I want to, all of you who haven't ever been in Elkhart, welcome to Elkhart. For all of you who have been in and out of Elkhart, why don't you stay in? You don't have to go out. But to all of you inside of the industry, just let it be known that Elkhart will be right here walking with you. Thank you, welcome, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It occurs to me that we don't give our Indiana Association sometimes enough credit for how much they help our industry and interact with representatives of our state government, making sure that they are kept informed as to our industry needs. And I'd like Ron Breimeyer and Matt Rose from IMHA, RVIC, to stand up, please, be recognized. Ron, where's Matt? And I'd like to invite to the stage one of Indiana's elected officials that IMHA works with on a regular basis. Please welcome from Martinsville, Indiana, Senator and President Pro Tem of the Indiana Senate, Mr. Rod Bray.
Well, good morning. Couldn't be more pleased to be here. Might be a little more pleased if this was a power brunch rather than a power breakfast. But thanks for having me. Gracious, actually, to be here. And I think the reason that it's important for me and folks like myself and Senator Glick, Senator Rogers, and Doug Miller, and so many other elected officials are here today is because, as you all know, and Indiana has found out over the last several years, that the RV industry and this industry is a huge economic driver for the state of Indiana. We really appreciate that. In fact, I can say we are grateful for that. You guys take the risk and have the vision, and it's for the state of Indiana to come alongside you and see how we can be a partner to help you to continue to be successful, and we're going to continue to do that now. Obviously, we try to make a competitive tax structure and a reasonable regulatory environment, but anymore it feels like that is the baseline that Indiana or any state has to do to be successful. And you got to find other things to do that are going to help you continue to carve out your niche in the economy of today. And that might be things like workforce. I think that's probably a huge challenge for you. Everywhere I go in the state of Indiana, it's a challenge for us. So we're going to happy to help if we can in whatever way. And I've had some conversations here this morning to find some other things where we can be helpful with, to try and find, for instance, camping infrastructure and things that we can do to help expand that across the state of Indiana. I know you didn't come here to hear from me, so I'm going to sit down now, but I want to thank you for having me here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rod, and for all the Indiana elected and local elected officials that are with us this morning. The RV industry has long been quietly and sometimes not so quiet and generous supporters of a host of area charities and charitable causes. No one knows that better than our next speaker, Candy Yoder, Chief Program Officer for the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, standing in for Pete McCown. And though Candy is not a stand-in for anyone, let me assure you, she has a career in public service and has been a wonderful addition to the foundation staff as they move forward towards new horizons. Please welcome Candy Yoder.
Thank you. I've never seen this room so full. How impressive. Pete asked me to stand in for him today as he's out of town due to a family emergency. I've been working with Pete at the Community Foundation for 4 years. I'm pleased to be here as I know a number of you in the room because of my long tenure at CAPS, and I'm so grateful for your investments in our community. Pete had prepared written words, and so I will read his words this morning. I'd like to thank the Power Breakfast Planning Committee for the invitation to speak to you this morning. The last time I had this opportunity was in 2018. You are Elkhart County's most important industry. We celebrate the growth and success of your industry over the last 50 years. We acknowledge and thank you for your involvement in our community as employers, community leaders, volunteers, and donors to the important network of charitable organizations in Elkhart County. This is a time of renaissance in Elkhart, led by your industry and the prosperity we have all been enjoying because of your innovation and hard work. From our vantage point at the Community Foundation, we are seeing a new wave of philanthropy and community investments. Over the last 4 years, as you've been building millions of RVs, I thought you might be interested in a few highlights of what your Community Foundation has been investing in. The most obvious is the construction of the Elkhart Health and Aquatic Center and the surrounding River District development. In addition, we've made significant investments in the creation of Junior Achievement BizTown experiential learning facility, a major renovation of the Goshen Theater, implementation of Manufacturing Day, which is a field trip experience where every 8th grader in Elkhart County has the opportunity to visit and tour a manufacturing facility and learn about the careers in the industry. Construction of a new home for Retta Pregnancy Services at the site of the former Martin's Pet and Garden. Expansion of the Boys and Girls Club facilities in Goshen, Middlebury, Elkhart, and Napanee. Completion of the Japanese garden at the Wellfield Botanic Garden. Construction of the Mittler Engineering, Technology, and Innovation Center at the Elkhart Career Center. Addition of the Patient Tower at Goshen Hospital. Creation of the Partnership for Children. Construction of a new facility for Spa Women's Ministries. And finally, the creation of Stable Grounds, a therapeutic equine facility serving kids in Middlebury. Looking ahead, we're on the cusp of constructing a new facility for Lifeline Ministries, a new community center in Bago Township, Doc Abel's Pavilion in Wakarusa, completion of the Pumpkin Vine Bike Trail, a permanent visitor center, outdoor pavilion, and memorial garden at the Wellfield Botanic Gardens, and a new Tolson Center for Community Excellence. And that's just a short list of the hundreds of programs and projects the Community Foundation has invested in since 2018. At the Community Foundation of Elkhart County, we work to connect these projects to philanthropists, many of whom are in this room. Due to your generosity, the Community Foundation of Elkhart County has become one of the largest community foundations in the United States. Our community relies on each of you. If you are newer to this industry, we invite you to join other leaders of the RV industry and get involved in great organizations that serve kids and families and improve the quality of life for all. We all live here. We have families and neighbors, and we have a responsibility together to make this community all that it can be. I and my colleagues at the Community Foundation feel a deep sense of responsibility to help guide the future growth and development of our community. You are a critical part of what we are attempting to accomplish. I pray Elkhart County will always be known as the RV capital of the world. That's because of you. We're thankful that you're here, and we're thankful for your generosity to your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Candy, and thank all of the individuals and companies that are here today and those that aren't for their care of our community, not only through the Community Foundation, but in many other ways. First up today, via pre-recorded video, serving us for 11 years as Indiana's second district representative, Jackie Wolorski is a native of South Bend and current resident of nearby Jimtown. During her tenure, Jackie has openly supported the RV industry through legislative initiatives, as well as serving us well as an advisor on issues to other elected and appointed officials. Please pay attention and welcome Representative Jackie Wolorski.
Good morning, and thank you for gathering today as the champions of the RV industry. I'm Jackie Wolorski, and I'm honored to join with so many friends and neighbors in celebrating the RV community. Congratulations on reaching the 10th annual RV Industry Power Breakfast. This is an amazing event now for a decade strong. As most of you know, I represent the RV capital of the world, and it's my privilege to serve as your voice in Congress. You're the lifeblood of Indiana's manufacturing powerhouse, and you are essential to our community and our economy. Right now, I know that we're all facing some tough challenges with more on the horizon. Rising gas prices, skyrocketing inflation, and worst of all, the persistent supply chain bottleneck poses a great threat to this vital industry. I hear from RV leaders across Indiana nearly every day about what you're all experiencing on the ground. Believe me, I hear you and I share your frustrations. We need to get supply chains moving again, and we need to get our ports working overtime. For too long, workforce shortages and pandemic-era challenges have stunted manufacturing. We're seeing the catastrophic ramifications of these policies. Lines in Indiana shouldn't be stopped because we can't figure out how to get materials off of boats in the Pacific Ocean. I've been a strong and vocal opponent of the Biden administration's lackluster approach to the supply chain crisis. At every level, I'm advocating to overcome burdensome roadblocks. In addition to calling on other federal leaders, I'm working on solutions to get more people in the vital transportation sector on ports, rails, and roads. And I welcome your input on solutions to this devastating setback. This is going to take a team effort. On the trade front, I'm continuing to advocate for a long-term reauthorization of the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP, and a more robust exclusion process to provide relief to American workers and manufacturers. As a senior member of the Ways and Means Committee, I'm proud to lead a bipartisan strategy to combat China's unfair trade practices without sacrificing the success of American industry. We know that strong, secure, and resilient supply chains are the key to success. As Congress considers next steps on enhancing America's competitiveness, I will continue to keep our shared priorities at the forefront. When people in Washington hear from me, they know they're going to hear about RVs. I've got your back, and I'm so grateful for your partnership. Thank you for investing in our community and in this vital industry. It's so great to be with you by video today, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you in person again soon.
Indiana Senator Mike Braun today will be rejoining us on a live link from his office and studio in Washington, D.C. B.J. Thompson of B.J. Thompson and Associates will serve as our host for the senator. Senator Braun was elected to the Senate in 2018 after serving in the Indiana House for 4 years. The senator is a businessman from Jasper, Indiana, where he founded and was CEO of Meyer Distributing, now an industry aftermarket company, until his entry into elective government roles. He's a graduate of Wabash College with an MBA from Harvard, serves proudly on 6 senatorial committees, and works toward creating great American jobs, building a strong national defense, reducing the national debt and deficit, and helping our veterans. Please welcome B.J. Thompson and Senator Mike Braun.
Thank you. Senator.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Well, in DC, brace for another day.
Well, welcome to Elkhart. I think we just panned our crowd, which, as Greg mentioned, is a record attendance. And we're sorry you weren't able to be here, but I understand you've got some fairly important things going on back there in DC. Anyway, thank you for your time this morning.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I would ask a few questions here. And first of all, you may want to have some opening comments, but after you do that, if you'd give us your general thoughts about the economy and what we're seeing right now, and how what your views are regarding how it's being handled by the Biden administration.
So I think we're at a classic crossroads. I come from the world where you do budgets, you got to make ends meet. Was on a local school board for 10 years, and no one plays by the rules in the way that this place does. So where you've got accountability, you've got the rigor of competition. In the 37 years I ran my business, but here it's different. And I think that it's been on display where political enterprisers, government, has shown what can happen and what can go wrong. We obviously all were uncertain how to maybe navigate through COVID. That was an outlier that we hadn't dealt with in modern times. You had 2 impeachments along the way. For a guy like me that likes to measure results, it's a little frustrating, and things don't happen quickly here anyway. Maybe that's a good thing when you look at the track record. So as it relates to where do we go from here, I think we're at a place where it's going to be a clear choice. Everything here is pretty binary, and you look at what the Biden administration has been doing, either going up this fork of the road or the other. It seems like almost on purpose, you choose the wrong thing to do. Pre-COVID, it was the strongest economy I can remember. I was part of it through all of that time until early 2020. I'd been here a year. When you look at the good old days of no inflation, wages going up in the toughest places, and not having government do it. In December of 17, we passed the Jobs Act and tax cut bill, and I was just getting the CBO ready to admit that when you have lower rates, you can generate the same amount of tax revenue. It's all clear now. And there's another side of the aisle that believes that government is the cathedral and it should be driving our lives. Thank goodness we're domiciled in Indiana and we live in great communities like Elkhart County, Du Bois County. Our county is per capita right up there with you folks on manufacturing. I come from that world of making ends meet, practical government. It's on display now, clear choices for what might happen in the midterms.
Well, we appreciate your perspective, certainly, because you've been out here in the trenches and you know what it's like. Regarding the southern border, what might your comments be regarding how we might better protect the interests of the American public?
I mean, the border has been there as an issue, again, where it's so easy to measure what was happening before. Basically, the come across with no restrictions sign was put up. I and about 17, 18 other Republican senators were down there a little over a year ago, right when crossings were starting to move from record lows, with the wall being almost completed in places and the stay in Mexico policy. And it's surrounding an issue that everywhere I go, workforce. It's got to where even work visas have gotten caught up in the chaos on the southern border. We need to secure it, and then we need to roll up our sleeves and fix the problems associated with it. Legal immigration obviously has to be a lot more than what we were doing prior to. There are some industries, probably up in Elkhart County, I know in my county, agriculture for sure, that need people to fill those slots. Sadly, it could all happen. The other side, though, for political purposes, doesn't want to put border security as part of the equation. If they did that by maybe completing some of the physical restrictions in the high traffic area, apply maybe a little more manpower to the border, but tell us you're really interested in having a sovereign border, we'd fix a lot of those other issues. It's going to be a driver, along with inflation, crime in the big cities, among many other issues that should put us as Republicans in a really good place. When we get the reins back, what do we do with it? We can't be the party of no, or I'm not interested. We got to make sure that we weigh in, and ideally, when we get the presidency back, undo some of the craziness that's been put in place.
Thank you. Appreciate that. There's a rumor going around out here. We continue to talk about it. It's speculation regarding your plans to run for governor of Indiana. I thought we just ask you directly if there's any truth to it, and maybe along with that, what your thoughts are regarding how things are being handled currently here in the state by the Holcomb administration.
Well, heck, I haven't heard that rumor. No, I'm kidding. I've been asked that question from almost the time I got elected senator, and that's because when you've run an enterprise for 37 years and you know what can be done, and I am a believer in term limits. I pledged I would not run for Senate more than 2 terms in total. I know how the system works. You're rewarded, sadly, by time spent, seniority, not necessarily results. So I'll make my mind up. It's an honor to serve Hoosiers. It was a heck of a campaign to become a U.S. Senator, not the normal pathway. I've got my own clock to consider, my family as well, but I'm going to be doing something, and I'll have to make my mind up early into next year.
Thank you. We appreciate knowing your thoughts on that, and understand too that it's not a decision to be taken lightly. Finally, we probably would be remiss in not mentioning your long-term connection to the RV industry. Speaking specifically of Myers Distributing, that you started back in the mid-1980s. And as we discussed once before when you were out here for a conference, you're not perhaps directly involved, but you still have family ties, right? And I guess the question is, do you miss us? And the daily demands of the RV business?
So I do. The business I started was auto and truck accessories when I think there were 3 pickup trucks. A Dodge that most folks, other than a few farmers, weren't driving back then, GMC, Chevy, and Ford. Along after that came S10s and Rangers. Look at the number of sport utilities and pickup trucks currently. I guess when I decided to try to save our business, it was mostly selling products to farmers in the year of the farm crisis, when interest rates borrowing hit as high as almost 18%. Chaotic times. We made it through. My little milk run business, where my office was got introduced early after being here, that it was a double wide trailer. I said, no, it was a used single wide. 17 years in that business, and knew I had a tiger by the tail. And we now have 70 locations in 40 states and became the second national distributor in the RV sector about 5 or 6 years ago. Just crossed into Canada a few years ago. The American dream. My early supply source was Elkhart, Indiana. When you remember bug shields that actually stood straight up and could kill a bug, and aluminum running boards, and thousands of products that we now distribute. We're kind of known for big, bulky, easy to damage, hard to handle. That eliminates a little competition. And I'm blessed. 3 of my 4 kids are in the business with a good young executive team. And I go back every week. Everything I like to do is back home. And at 5 o'clock at my older son's house, we start a little happy hour and discuss politics and business. So I'm still tightly involved, just from a different point of view. I had to resign as CEO when I was sworn in as senator. And again, where we're at as a state, the business climate we've got, and the beauty of building a distribution business out of necessity, when you're in the crossroads of America, and when FedEx told us that triangle from Louisville to Evansville to Indy is the sweetest distribution spot in the country, sometimes you have to pinch yourself.
Thank you. We really appreciate knowing about all that and your feelings. In conclusion, number one, we appreciate your time. We also appreciate very much all the work that you're doing on our behalf here at the RV industry. Anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
Well, I think, my membership on the Budget Committee and the Appropriations Committee, I'm as optimistic about our country as one could be. I'm worried about the biggest business in the world. When the leader of our country just put a budget out there that says we're going to grow our annual deficits to 1.5 trillion on the average the next 10 years, puts us in debt to the tune of 45 trillion. And I think about my dad coming out of World War II, tail gunner in a B-17, that sacrifice. We had a work ethic that was unbelievable then. We were savers and investors. We paid off all of that war debt, which was the highest as a percentage of the GDP until recently, built the interstate highway system. And we had a federal government, regardless of which party, that was not willing to borrow from our kids and grandkids. That's what I'm going to harp on for the time I spend here, knowing that if something doesn't change, it'll be our elderly that depend on the federal government for Social Security and Medicare. and those that are at the lower end of the income scale for their health care with Medicaid, that will be the bubble that will fall apart. And that'll be a tragedy because it would be easy to avoid with a little political will and backbone. I'll be preaching that regardless of what I do down the road. Thanks for having me. Always love to circle back to Indiana.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Many thanks to BJ and Senator Braun and the Senator for taking time from his video or his busy schedule early this morning. Our next honored guest with us was going to be with us in person this morning, but as we've told you before, is now doing a video link. We're proud to welcome Indiana's senior senator, Todd Young. Todd hails from Hamilton County, Indiana. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, the University of Chicago, and Indiana University. He was elected to the Senate in November 2016 after serving 6 years in the Indiana House of Representatives. Senator Young currently serves on 4 senatorial committees, including Foreign Relations and Finance, and is running for re-election in 2022, the mid-year elections coming up this year. Please give Senator Young a warm and appreciative welcome to the Power Breakfast and to the RV industry. BJ?
Senator Young, you don't know how good it is to see you. After yesterday, jumping through all kinds of hoops with Lindsay, and by the way, she's a champ. We appreciate her from your staff. And Courtney Papa is here with us this morning, so thank you for that. But trying to get you out of DC on a flight to be with us this morning, it didn't work. And we understand you're very busy, and we appreciate that, by the way. Opening comments and about what's been keeping you busy, perhaps, Senate activities, and what's keeping you in DC right now?
Well, it's good to be with all of you. I wish I could have been there in person. Many of you know I began my congressional career serving Indiana's 9th Congressional District, which is located in the southeast part of our state. And I ran for the United States Senate 6 years ago. Then my objective was to learn as much as I could about the important industries across various parts of our state. And one of those industries, obviously, is the RV industry. So I visited a manufacturer one day to tour the shop, and they took me to the training area where they test new hires. There's a board with a bunch of nuts and an impact wrench. Now, trainees had to be able to tighten all the nuts, and I remember there being like 15 or so in a certain amount of time to pass. They invited me to give it a try, and I performed, I think, worse than anyone in the history of that test. I tightened exactly one nut in the allotted time. And so the manager came over to me and said, "Todd, you just earned my vote." And I was sort of perplexed. I said, "How's that?" And he said, "Because after what I just saw, I'm not sure you'd be able to find a job in any other line of work." So, listen, I have great memories visiting with many of you. Over the past 6 years, I think I've visited with folks in the RV industry more than any other Hoosier industry, except for maybe agriculture. And I do so because I believe in the work you're doing, and because I'm extremely grateful for how deeply each and every one of you care for the people of Indiana. I see it front and center. The RV industry is having a great year. You don't need me to tell you that, but I'll say that I believe some portion of your success is in part thanks to the policies that folks like Jackie Wolorski or Mike Braun and I have fought for. We passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that not only reformed the tax code to ensure manufacturers were treated fairly, it also delivered a tax cut to your workers, ensuring that they too can keep more of their hard-earned paychecks. We made the largest investment ever in our national park system through the Great American Outdoors Act, which made long-awaited investments in our parks so that your customers had beautiful places to visit. We even got the Secretary of the Interior to Elkhart to celebrate that bill's passage. We created our first national park in Indiana, Indiana Dunes, which has seen significant increases in traffic since it became a national park. We expanded the Lewis and Clark Trail to include all of the counties in Indiana along the Ohio River, making the Falls of the Ohio State Park a more attractive destination. The last thing I'll mention is part of the reason I couldn't be with you in person today, and I'm very sorry about that. In addition to the important votes that were added to the Senate floor, today in Washington, the first public conference committee meeting for my U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, or USICA, is taking place. I introduced this bipartisan bill 2 years ago as our way to out-innovate and out-compete the Chinese Communist Party. This legislation will provide a huge boost to advance manufacturing in the state of Indiana and really across our country. And the bill is really broad in scope, so there are other components you may be interested in. First, it provides funding for manufacturing chips here in the United States so that we aren't reliant on other countries for the processors that our technology relies on. Second, it includes an important trade title that would extend the generalized system of preferences and restart the Section 301 tariff exclusion process. My view is we should use our trade policy tools to counter China's unfair economic practices, but we can do so without inhibiting competitiveness and capacity of our job creators here in the United States. In the last 6 years, I've learned a lot about the RV industry, and I thank all of you for educating me about this terrific industry. But the biggest takeaway that I have is that RVs aren't just important for Elkhart County. In fact, this is the epicenter. But the benefits of the industry spread throughout the state of Indiana and across the country, and we're seeing that. As long as that's true, it's my job in Washington, D.C. to support your continued success because it's good for the country. I want all of you to continue to employ tens of thousands of Hoosiers and to continue to build a better Indiana. So I thank you for what you do. I thank you for allowing me to be an important part of it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the conference. God bless.
Thank you. You covered a lot of ground, and I appreciate that, and covered some of the questions I had for you. So thank you. One thing I'd like for you to mention, a little diversion or separation from what we've been talking about. Regarding the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you've got a military background. I know that you're getting briefed on a regular basis of what's happening over there. What are your thoughts on how we can better approach that situation? One, and number two, why can't we send a missile to where those missiles are coming from in Russia?
Yeah, so my thoughts are, in short, because it's a very long and important topic, but what we need to do is keep the Europeans unified, ensure that they're joining us in this fight. And this fight means ensuring that we are not disadvantaging ourselves as Americans when it comes to the application of tariffs against inputs coming from Russia. The Europeans are joining us. This is not an opportunity to take away market share, right? So we need to be unified in our economic efforts to throttle the Russian economy. We also need to be unified in our efforts to invest in the success of the Ukrainian military. So the United States needs to resource the Ukrainian military in a responsible way as stewards of the taxpayer dollars, but the Europeans need to join us in this effort. In terms of our military's expertise and our intelligence community, we have provided invaluable expertise to the Ukrainians, which is why I believe you've seen them be able to sink some Russian vessels. They've killed high-ranking Russian officers. Their intelligence is very good, and their ability to reach bad actors of a high rank is directly linked to our assistance. So there are ways, seen and unseen, that they are dependent on our continued efforts. And the reason we're there, sometimes this gets lost, but someone has to enforce rules. And we are in an advantageous position where the Ukrainian military is willing to do the hard fighting to demonstrate that there are still rule makers and rule keepers in the world. We're not sending in soldiers or Marines or Navy SEALs, and that's a good thing for the American people. But this can, though expensive in the short term, this can be a value proposition if we deter Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party from moving on Taiwan in those chip fabrication facilities through an example of deterrence. In terms of why not just shooting a missile into Russia, for example, Russia has nuclear weapons, and that is the short answer. Nuclear weapons, and they have a leader who is highly unpredictable and just might be crazy enough to use them.
We get it. Thank you. You've been very generous to carve out some valuable minutes for us. We appreciate that. Sorry you can't be here with us in person, but again, your staff has been great to help us out here, and we appreciate that, and for all that you've done and are doing on behalf of the RV industry. In conclusion, anything you'd like to say to sign off to our 1,030 plus people here?
Yeah, why don't I just sort of close on an optimistic note? There are a lot of reasons to be pessimistic, and I admit that some days I wake up and am dispirited by, the porous southern border, the consumer price inflation, some of the weakness that I think is projected on the international stage by the United States, far left proposals for Green New Deals. All those things are bothersome to me. But when I sort of survey all the things we have going for us as a country, as I travel around Indiana, I think about our world-class higher ed system. I experience our culture of entrepreneurship that celebrates people who try and fail and get up and dust off their trousers and try again. I see the end product of the broadest, deepest capital markets in the world, investing money very efficiently in where it's needed to help people become more materially wealthy and realize their dreams. I run into members of our military, best in class military. I marvel at how peaceful our lives are. I mean, we're protected by two vast oceans and the greatest military in the history of mankind. I run into members of our legal immigrant community and diaspora communities who came to this country maybe generations ago, maybe days ago, and they see the opportunities in America with fresh eyes. All of you can add to this list of national assets. The only liabilities I can think of is a dysfunctional national government that can't seem to act boldly when it needs to. And listen, that's in our hands. We also have on the asset column a system of self-government that can affect change when we need to. And we've done so for about 250 years, always proving the pessimists wrong. So we should all be self-confident. We should be optimistic. And we should have a whole lot of pride that this remains the best nation in the history of mankind. So with that, I'll close.
Thank you. You got a great applause. I don't know if you heard that, but we're very appreciative for everything. Senator, thank you. Have a good day. We'll see you later.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly thank all of our elected officials for being with us today. And we're winding up the first segment of our session today with an economist and analyst who comes to us with great credentials and high recommendations from his peers. Stephen Moore is a chief economist at the Heritage Foundation and a former member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. His columns have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Times, the Weekly Standard, and the National Review. Mr. Moore served as an advisor to the Trump administration, and he was nominated to serve as a governor on the Federal Reserve. Moore is an accomplished economist, a Fox News contributor, an author, and writer. In his book, The Who's the Fairest of Them All, The Truth About Taxes, Income, and Wealth in America, was published in 2012. Let's have a warm RV welcome for Mr. Stephen Moore.
Hi, good morning, folks. It is a privilege to be here. I know how excited you are to hear from an economist. You know, economists were the people who are very good with numbers, but
Stephen, excuse me.
Yeah.
This is your slide.
that's the clicker. All right.
That's the clicker.
All right.
Do you want to use your ear mic or your?
This is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
I was going to say about economists that, you know, we are people who are very good with numbers, but just didn't quite have the personality to be accountants. So I'm sure you're excited to hear from one. This is an amazing event. I do a lot of events around the country, and I've never seen anything quite like this. And one thing I'll say about Elkhart, Indiana, is it seems to me you people get more done before 10 o'clock in the morning than most people do all day, and that's one of the reasons you're such a productive place. I am proud to be here. Senator, it's great to see you. You have two incredible senators, by the way. I work very closely with both of them. Mike Braun, by the way, is a superstar, and please don't take him away from us. We need him in Washington. I had a great, when I flew in last night to South Bend, I was walking through the terminal, and this young woman, she was walking past me, and she gave me this wonderful kind of Indiana welcome. She just kind of ran up to me, and she kind of hugged me. She was so excited. And she said, "I know you, don't I?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, ma'am." And she was very excited. It was very endearing. And she kept looking up at me, and she couldn't quite remember where she had seen me before. And she said, "Have I seen you on TV?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, ma'am. Maybe." I said, "What do you watch?" And finally, she looked up and the light bulb went on, and she said, "Oh, yeah." She said, "Didn't I see you on Wheel of Fortune last week?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am, that was me." How many of you watch Fox News in this room? How many of you Fox News? A lot of you. How many of you watch CNN? Sir, you're in the wrong room. No, I'm just kidding. By the way, there are, how many people did you say? 1,030 people in this room. 1,030 people. That is more people than the entire number across the country of people who signed up for CNN Plus. So, by the way, how do you come up with such a crazy idea like that? I mean, here you've got a network where nobody's watching, declining ratings, and you know, it's free. And they say, "Hey, we've got an idea. Let's charge people to watch CNN." And that didn't work out so well. Okay. I want to give you guys kind of a sense of what is going on with the economy. I was privileged to work as a senior advisor to Trump. I worked very closely with him on the 2016 campaign and was honored to be part of his economic recovery task force. And I'll say this about Donald Trump. And by the way, I know in this room, there's all sorts of different opinions about Trump. And I've come to greatly admire the man, but there is a good and a bad and ugly about Trump. And it is true that Trump is oftentimes his own worst enemy. But he was an incredible guy to work for. I've never quite met anyone like him. And, you know, I'll just tell you one story, if I may, from being around someone like him. I remember the first time Trump asked me to travel with him on the campaign and spend a couple of days, you know, on the plane going from here and there, you know, Oklahoma City to Nashville to Houston. I mean, that man is, you know, whether you love him or hate him, that man is a freak of nature. I've never seen anybody, you know, who has as much energy as he does. Anyway, I thought it would be really cool to travel with him because, you know, he's a billionaire. He's a billionaire. And I thought, wow, this is going to be so great to go on the plane with him, and we'll, we're going to have lobster and caviar and champagne on every meal. And then we get on the plane, and Trump would literally do 4 or 5 cities a day. He's indefatigable, and when you're on the campaign, you really don't have time. You'd get on the plane, you get off the plane, you get in the motorcade, you go to the event, like something like this, and then you immediately, get back in the motorcade, go back on the plane. You never had any chance to eat. So I thought, well, this is going to be so wonderful, all these meals. No, with Donald Trump, every meal was always the same. It was McDonald's for lunch and Pizza Hut for dinner. He is a man of the people. He loves fast food. I do think, by the way, for better or worse, I do think it's a high likelihood that I just saw the president a couple of weeks ago, had lunch with him. I do think he is going to run for president again. By the way, can you just be my focus group for a minute? And I want your honest opinion. How many of you in this room would like to see Donald Trump run for president again? Raise your hand. Wow, maybe about half. How many of you do not want to see Donald Trump run for president again? So, the country is split on that. We'll see what happens, but it was an honor to have worked with him. One other quick Trump story, if I may, and then I will get down to economics. I was at a dinner with him that he invited me to a dinner at the White House about 2 years ago, and he was talking to a bunch of the governors, and there were maybe about 50 people in the room, and he's talking from the podium and just extemporaneously, and he's just doing stream of consciousness stuff and just talking. And there was a governor who was about 10 feet away from him, and the governor was just sipping a glass of wine while he was talking at this dinner. And Trump turns to him and he says, "Governor," he said, "do you know that I don't drink?" And by the way, how many of you knew that about Trump? How many of you knew that Trump didn't drink? I've been around him all the time. It never occurred to me. I never saw him drink. He said, "Governor, do you know I don't drink?" And this governor says, "Yes, sir. I had heard that about you." And Trump says, "Governor, can you imagine me if I drank?" That was a pretty funny thing. Okay, so let's get down to the economics. What's going on with the economy? I share the thoughts that you've heard of the 2 senators. I believe that, we are in a short time, a very precarious time right now with the economy, no question about it. This is a dangerous period. We are skating on the verge of a recession. We had negative growth in the first quarter. You all know that the official definition of a recession is 2 straight quarters of negative growth. So if we were to have negative growth this quarter, that would be a recession, although so far it looks like we're going to get some modest growth this year. But obviously the cancer cell in the economy right now is this massive inflation. And we were speaking a little bit at dinner last night about how when I talk to people about inflation and I tell people that the inflation rate is 8 or 8.5%, people actually get angry at me. I've been on the road a lot lately, and people get angry. Inflation is not 8 or 8.5%. People feel like it's much worse than that. And the reason they do is we've seen about an 80% increase in the gasoline price. And when Trump left office, the price of gasoline nationwide was $2.59 a gallon. Today, nationwide, it's $4.29 a gallon. That's a huge increase. My math is right. That's about a 70% increase in energy prices. We're seeing food prices up 25%. We're seeing, just the kinds of basic things that people buy are rising a lot faster than 8.5%. So for middle-class families, this inflation rate really feels like it's like 10 or 15%. And so we have to, the simple matter is if we're going to have a robust economy, we have to bring the inflation rate down. We have to, because when you let inflation persist, how many of you in this room remember, anybody remember, as the senator said, when we had 16, 17% mortgage interest rates? Raise your hand if you remember that. If, for those of us who were born, say, before 1964, baby boomers, we remember that very vividly. I remember gasoline lines. I remember the price going up and up and up. And that led to that inflation in the 1970s under Nixon, Ford, and Carter. That was the worst period for the U.S. economy since the Great Depression. And it was all fueled by higher inflation. So let me give you, I'm going to show you some charts, if I may. If you could put those up, please, and then I'll. All right, so let me just kind of go through this. There will be an exam at the end of this. And so I want to give you some themes about what's going on in this country right now. And one of the things I neglected to say from the outset is congratulations to Indiana. Indiana has been an amazing state. We do a survey. We've been doing it for 15 years. I was mentioning this group, ALEC, the Rich States, Poor States. Indiana, in our ratings in terms of best economic environment, has moved from 24th in the country, so you were about average. In our latest ratings, Indiana is now ranked 9th. So you've had great governors. You have a string of really, really great governors in the state, and leadership matters. You had Mitch Daniels, and then Mike Pence, and I guess it's Governor Holcomb today. They've done an amazing job making Indiana a very pro-competitive place. But one of the themes I think that's going on in America that people aren't paying enough attention to is there really are sort of two Americas today. There's no question about it. We are a polarized nation, and I don't say that with any joy. It's actually a negative thing, but we've turned into a red state America and a blue state America. And you see the policies actually, instead of converging, the liberal states are getting more liberal, the conservative red states are getting more conservative. And the question is, do these policies matter? Do people migrate to areas where taxes are low, regulations are low, you have a more of a free market system, or do they go to the more liberal states? And what you can see here is this is just over the last decade, what's happening to the population trends in America. And what you're seeing is that the states that had by far the most immigration are states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, states like North Carolina, and so on. By the way, Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, the three of the fastest growing states have something in common. And that is that those 3 states have no income tax. They have no state income tax. One of the things I'd love to see you all do in Indiana, there's 9 states in America today that have no income tax, no state income tax. Wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if we could make I don't want to put too much pressure on you, Senator. Let's make Indiana the 10th state in the country without an income tax. What do you think about that idea? Wouldn't that be an awesome thing? So people are definitely moving to these states that have less regulation. And then look at the blue states, by the way. Look at states like California, my home state of Illinois. Look at what's happening in New York and New Jersey. Those states are just bleeding people. The people they're getting in their RVs and they're getting in their cars and they're packing them up and they're moving out. And the depopulation of those, and by the way, you might be able to understand why people might want to leave New York and New Jersey, right? But California? I mean, how do you screw up California? This is the first time in the history of the United States that more people are leaving California than going to California. And it's because of these crazy policies that are going on there. So that's an important thing to see. And I think you're going to see more people moving to states like Indiana, which is a very positive thing. Okay. So I thought I'd show you what states, look, we are hopefully through with COVID. There'll probably be a few more variants, but right now they look like they're going to be a lot less deadly than the original variants of COVID. So let's pray that COVID is basically over for now. And what this is showing is we graded how the governors did and the states did in terms of dealing with COVID. And we looked at 3 variables. Number 1, how did the states do in terms of keeping the death rate low? Did they keep their citizens healthy with their policies? The second policy is, did they keep their businesses open? Did they destroy their state economies, or did they allow businesses to stay open as much as possible? And the third factor we looked at was, did they keep their schools open? I would make the case to you that the single greatest episode of child abuse in this country was what happened in the last year and a half with the shutting down of our schools. Never, never, never again should we shut down our schools, right? It was outrageous. It did great damage to our children, and it can't happen again. And Senator, you in Indiana did a pretty good job of that, of keeping your schools open. And so anyway, you can see from this map that Indiana did a pretty good job, but in the Midwest did. But you can see the coastal states did very poorly in terms of dealing with COVID. We've got to keep our businesses open. We got to keep our schools open, and we got to keep our commerce flowing. So it matters, by the way. You can see these are the unemployment rates as of the end of last year, and they haven't changed a whole lot. You can see that the states with these red states just have lower unemployment. They have more pro-growth policies. My point is, policy matters. If you get the policies right, good things happen. If you get the policies wrong, bad things happen. And look at those states like New Jersey and California and New York and and so on, Michigan. They've just done a really poor job of being pro-business. Indiana's a pro-business state, and it's a reason why Indiana has a low unemployment rate. And so policy matters at the state level. Okay, now let's turn to the federal level. And both senators talked about this. We have, what is the single, look at how much money we spent on COVID. We spent $5 trillion, $5 trillion on COVID, just more and more and more and more spending. And what's really something that's indefensible is that, when Biden came in, and by the way, Trump spent too much money. I do believe that Trump, when he made decisions, he always tried to put America first. I believe that. I was in a lot of meetings with him in the Oval Office. I didn't always agree with everything he did, but I really did believe, sincerely, he thought, will this policy put America first? Will it benefit American workers? Will it benefit American companies and so on? But we spent too much money on COVID, and you have to wonder, gee, what did we get for that $5 trillion? A million people still died of COVID. So it's a real question about whether those policies worked. And then Biden came in and we spent $3 trillion more. So last year we had $3 trillion of additional spending on top of the normal money that the federal government spends. Remember, we had the $1.9 trillion, which was basically a blue state bailout bill to bail out all the blue states that had shut down. And then we had that sham infrastructure bill, that $1.1 trillion bill. Well, you know what? If you spend $3 trillion and borrow $3 trillion and print $3 trillion, what's going to happen to inflation? This isn't complicated stuff, right? It's not complicated. I saw the president yesterday in his speech saying government spending had nothing to do with inflation. He's completely wrong about that. That was the massive amount of spending and debt is the match that lit the forest fire of this higher spending. So what do we have to do to bring inflation down? We have to stop government spending. We should actually be cutting government spending in Washington right now, not adding to it if we're going to bring the inflation rate down. This is kind of a scary statistic here. Now, this is for 2020. During the height of COVID, for the first time in American history, our government sector at the federal, state, and local levels actually was more than the entire output of the private sector. So government, in fact, for the last couple of years, has been the fastest growing industry in America. What's wrong with that picture? We're supposed to be the land of the free. What this picture is saying is that we're kind of moving more and more in a socialist direction, which is obviously the opposite direction that we want to go in. We got to fix our tax code. I love this. This is an old Snoopy Peanuts cartoon, please IRS, take me off your mail list. One of the things I've been really dedicating my life to, and we need to do, is we need to fix our federal tax system. It is an abomination. We don't need to hire 80,000 new IRS agents. We just need to have either a simple flat tax, or we need to, how about this for a kind of radical idea? Why don't we just eliminate the federal income tax too and move towards a national sales tax? What do you think about that idea? That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it? So we need to fix our tax system. It is out of control. Now, I want to pivot a little bit because this is really critical for you all to understand what is the really dingbat energy policies that are being pursued in Washington right now. It's very dangerous what's happening. So what you're seeing here is the green line is what happened in from about 2009 to about 2020 when we had the Shale Revolution, which was an incredible revolution in technology where essentially overnight we tripled the amount of oil and gas that we have in this country because of new drilling techniques like horizontal drilling and fracking and so on, which just amazing technologies, which incredibly increased our energy productivity in America and the amount of oil and gas we have access to. And so you can see what happens in especially under Trump. We did drill, baby, drill. We drilled, and you can see what happened by the end of around 2019. The United States, for the first time in any of our lifetimes, the United States of America became completely energy independent. Unless you're over the age of 80, that had never happened in any of our lifetimes. In fact, throughout most of my life, I'm 60 years old, we've been, OPEC, Saudi Arabia and the other oil producing nations had a blade at our neck. This is what they were able to do in the 1970s, where they could switch off or switch on the oil production and put America into a recession. We were so dependent on them. Well, finally, by 2019, look at that. We were producing more oil and gas than Russia and Saudi Arabia. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, that's an incredible achievement. And so then Biden comes in and, look, I'm not here to criticize our president. He's done some things right. And I think has he done anything right? I can't think of anything, but I'm sure he's done something right. But this idea that, we're going to change the temperature of the planet by shutting down American energy. I mean, look, that's lunatic. That's crazy. That's crazy. Today in America, we get about 4 or 5% of our energy from wind and solar power. Is there anyone who really thinks we're going to be able to power a $22 trillion economy? You here produce, more recreational vehicles than any city in the world, right? Do you really think we're going to power that with windmills? I mean, it's so crazy, this idea. So you can see the Biden plan is to take us down from, something like we're at somewhere around 10 million barrels a day today to zero. That's just, that's not putting America first. And the only people who will benefit from that policy are China and Russia. Right? I mean, they are laughing at us. As Trump used to say, they're laughing behind our back. So this is, and you're already seeing a big decline. I believe that if Trump were president today, we would be producing 15 million barrels of oil a day. 15 million barrels. We could easily be doing that with our energy resources. You know where we're at? 10.5 million. So we're about 5 million barrels a day less than we should be at $100 a barrel. That's the United States of America is losing, if my math is right, $500 million a day because of this lunatic war on American energy. So that is a very, very dangerous policy, and it has to be reversed. Now people say, well, wait a minute, we've got to worry about climate change. We've got to worry about air pollution. Look, we all want a safe environment. We want a clean environment. It is a high priority for everyone. But one of the things, I just thought I'd show you this because most Americans don't understand. The most amazing thing is over the last 50 years, we've dramatically increased reduced the amount of pollution that we emit. It's incredible. And these are real pollutions. Carbon monoxide, lead, sulfur. Carbon monoxide is a pollution. Carbon monoxide. Carbon dioxide is not a pollution. Without carbon dioxide, there'd be no life on Earth. Look at this. I mean, and by the way, these are the kinds of pollutions that people would get sick from. With people with asthma and so on, you'd have breathing problems. Look at what we've done. That's it. Most Americans have no idea. When I ask school kids, when I go on college campuses, I say, do you think the air today is cleaner or dirtier today than it was 50 years ago? Most Americans think the water and the air was cleaner 50 years ago than today. And that's completely wrong. So we've done an amazing job cleaning up our air, and we'll continue to do that. We have the cleanest air of any other country, which brings us to these other countries that we're competing with. These are, by the way, remember we had this crazy Paris Climate Accord. One of the best things I think Trump did as president was pull America out of the anti-America Paris Climate Accord. Biden, of course, put us back in it. But look at this. None of these countries, none of the other countries have come anywhere near meeting their commitments. Gee, what a surprise that other countries wouldn't meet their treaty obligations. That never happens, right? And so you can see that none of them, almost none of them have. And in fact, Europe is actually moving back towards fossil fuels because they'd so damaged their economy with the green energy stuff. And so then, of course, let's look at what is the country that is by far responsible for the most pollution? Everyone in this room, you all know the answer to that question, right? China is the massive polluter in the world. Incidentally, every time we shut down a coal plant in West Virginia or Pennsylvania or Illinois, China builds 10 or 15 new coal plants. Somebody tell me how that's reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So until China and India and these other countries get serious about doing something about their pollution levels, even if the United States didn't exist as a nation, it would have virtually zero impact on how much carbon is being emitted into the atmosphere. So we should get very serious. And one other quick thing, I know I'm talking too long, but this is really important. If you care about climate change and you care about greenhouse gas emissions, The single most important thing we could do globally to reduce global emissions would be move all oil and gas production to the United States. You know why? Because we have by far the cleanest energy. And we have by far the strictest environmental standards. What we've done actually under Biden is actually make the problem worse because we're consuming the same amount of oil and gas. It's just that we're getting it from Russia and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and Iran rather than getting it from Texas and Oklahoma and Alaska. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's the story. We need to get going in producing more American energy. Did the Trump policies work? I'm kind of proud of this because I helped write the tax plan and so on. This just shows you what happened to median family income in the United States. You know, in the 3 years that Trump was president before COVID hit, because COVID, torpedoed the economy, we saw the biggest increase in median family income in the history of this country. It's pretty amazing, right? Most people don't know that, but you saw a surge. And by the way, the big surge in family income happened after the tax cuts that we put in place, the very tax cuts that Biden would want to repeal. So we're really proud of that. But I'm also really proud, and Trump should be, of this, that, I got so annoyed when people would say Donald Trump is a racist. You can disagree with Donald Trump's policies. As I said, I didn't always agree with, but there's no president that did more for the economic advancement of minorities than Donald Trump did. Look what happened to the Black unemployment rate and the Hispanic unemployment rate. Record lows, the lowest levels in 50 years. And we had the same thing with poverty rates. The poverty rates of Black Americans and Hispanic Americans fell to their lowest level in the history of the United States under Trump. They're rising again now. Policy matters. We cut taxes, we reduce regulation, we're pro-business. Okay, so let's just get to the inflation story, and then I will sum up. So you can see this is inflation over the last 60 years or so. You can see the big spike up in the middle in the 1970s under Ford and Nixon and Carter, when inflation just went up and up and up and up and up and up. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it capped out. At one point, we had an inflation rate in 1980 of almost 13%. It's the reason Jimmy Carter lost the election, right, to Reagan, is that people hate inflation. They hate it. They hate higher gas prices. And you can see when Reagan came in, look at that. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Under Reagan and Volcker, this was back in the early 80s, we went from an inflation rate from 13%. In 16 months, we went from 13% to 3%. And that's because of two things. We cut taxes, we reduced regulation, so we increased the supply of goods and services. When the supply of something goes up, the price goes down, right? And the other thing we did is Paul Volcker slammed his brake on the money supply. And so you reduce the supply of money in the economy and you increase the supply of goods and services, and guess what? Inflation goes away. Now there's a lesson there, right? That's exactly what we need to do now. The Fed has to get tighter and suck back some of this money. The government has to stop spending so much. And then we need pro-growth policies. We need actually more tax cuts, more deregulation, more policies that benefit American businesses. And if we do that, then we're going to get this under control. There's I like to look at commodities. There's your inflation, folks. Anybody think we don't have inflation? Look at what's happened just the last year and a half. I mean, this is the price of corn, wheat, cotton, oil, gas, coal, copper. It's an index of about 30 commodities. When you see a spike up of prices like that, that is the very definition of inflation. It's why I'm very nervous about where we are right now. And I think, I just want to make one last point about this. Sorry about this, is kind of muddled graph, but what this is showing is where the inflation rate over the last 25 years has been the highest, and what industries have had the lowest inflation rates. And you can see for a lot of, until very recently, until the last year or two, the price of actually things like clothing and textiles and computers and things like that were actually falling in price. So that was, they were becoming more and more affordable to people. And then if you look at the left side of the chart, you see the industries where inflation has been the highest. Now look at that, education and medical. Education and medical. What do those two industries have in common? Government, right? Those are the two industries that are most driven by government. And when I ask my liberal friends, gee, why do we have the government play such a major role in education and healthcare? They say, to make it more affordable. They're doing a great job of it, aren't they? So we need to maybe have the government play a little lesser role in education and healthcare. And then I'm going to just show you this because it's really important. We're all concerned about the stock market. We're all really concerned right now, given what's happened in the last week, where we've seen this, huge decline. And the United States has lost $8 trillion in wealth in just the last week. So this is a very dangerous time we're in right now. But if you follow this chart, look at the green chart below. That's basically the stock market adjusted for inflation. And you can see that when you have a high inflation period, the stock market falls because the stock market hates inflation. But we've had boom periods. I mean, look at what happened. Look at the blue line. What you're looking, I call this the greatest story never told, because what's happened in the United States over the last 40 years has never happened. The wealth creation in this country, the technological innovation, the expansion of our businesses and their productivity has been incredible. Nothing ever in the history of this world has ever happened like that. Just up and up and up and up. And you can see, we've seen, with that blue line, you can see that, yeah, sometimes we have recessions and it falls, but America always pulls out of these things. America always pulls out of these things, and it will right now. I'm here to tell you, yeah, maybe the next, year or so might be tough. But my buddy Larry Kudlow, I think you all know Larry Kudlow. He was the chief economist for Trump, and he was, the instrumental in the policies that Trump put together. He says it very well, that the cavalry is coming. The cavalry is coming. And that is to say, I think you are going to see some major changes in November. And look, I'm not a rah-rah Republican. I always say the reason I know Republicans are the pro-life party is they always find themselves in the fetal position. So Republicans aren't always so great either. But, the statistics show pretty clearly that when you have one party government, like we do now. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's the Republicans or the Democrats. When you have one party controlling all the levers of party, it's bad for America. It's bad for the stock market. We have one party government right now. And I do think you're going to see a change in the House and Senate. The cavalry is coming. There will be, I think, some change to put more pro-business people in. And just finally, in conclusion, I just want to say I am so amazed by your industry. There is a lot of chatter in America. I travel all the way from Maine to California and every state in between. And everywhere I go, people say, are we losing our manufacturing base? Can we make anything in America anymore? And I see what's happening here in Elkhart, Indiana. And hell yes, we can make things in America. So thank you very much for everything that you do to make America great.
Thank you, Steve. Inspiring and educational. And we appreciate that very much. Now let's go to a break. Try to limit it to 10 or 12 minutes. We're running a tad behind. So take a few minutes. Let's find our seats, please. Thank you. One more time, let's find our seats, please. There we go. Thank you. Let's get started on the second part of our morning. This is the industry update segment where we hear from various factions of the industry about what they're doing and what their progress is and what it might mean to our businesses and to our customers. Leading off this segment is RVIA, focusing on their Emerging Leaders Initiative. Ryan Elias, President and GM of Leisure Travel Vans and Tripoli RV in Canada, and a member of the Board of the Directors, will be first up for this segment. He'll be later joined by Samantha Rossi, Senior Manager of Government Affairs from RVIA, Michael Geddert from Coachman RV, and Michaela Grimes, Director of Corporate and Community Impact at Lippert Components. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan Elias.
Good morning. Take a moment and think of a transformative RV industry initiatives. What comes to mind? Our self-regulation, our standards program, the RV Technical Institute, or what about a little program called Go RVing? 25 years ago, industry leaders had a novel idea that working together to build the market would be more beneficial than trying to tackle the challenge individually as brands. This idea was a revolution. By uniting as an industry, we could be more effectively share our messaging with consumers, help grow the market, and sustain ourselves during challenging times. Developing that initial unity took vision, understanding, compromise, and trust built over time. But it paid great dividends. This unity has led to some of the industry's greatest successes, helping us through the pandemic with the creation of the industry relaunch task force, and what has led to the industry-defining programs I mentioned at the start. The term unity gets thrown a lot around these days. It seems that every group, corporation, political organization wants to brag about how unified they are. But the RV industry doesn't just use it as a buzzword. We live it each day. I echo Greg's comments to start about friendship. Just look around the room at the lasting relationships built over decades. I have the pleasure of serving on the RVIA Board of Directors, and I can tell you from a first-hand experience the importance of the RV Industry Association places on being a unifier for the RV industry. But what is next in maintaining and building upon this unity, especially as we are beginning to see the massive shifts in our demographics of consumers and the use of our products? Almost 2 years ago, RVIA President Craig Kirby considered this question and developed the idea of an Emerging Leaders Conference to bring together the next generation of industry leaders, develop connection that would take the industry forward another generation. The concept quickly became one of a task force and eventually the Emerging Leaders Coalition. Together, I, as ELC Chairman and Board Liaison, have worked with Samantha Rossi and Jeremy Green, RVIA staff liaisons, to bring together a group of emerging industry talent. From the first time the group met, it was clear that we wanted to do even more than just host a yearly conference. One of the first tasks the group tackled was developing a mission statement, which I'll share with you. Our mission is to strengthen institutional industry collaboration, competency, engagement, inclusivity, and innovation by identifying, recruiting, developing, engaging, and retaining emerging industry leaders and harnessing and elevating diverse emerging industry leader perspectives. The next generation of industry leaders, some of whom are in this room today, want to be on the front lines as we confront the most pressing industry issues. They want to not only build connections with the industries, but we want to serve our broader outdoor recreation community. And they don't want to just sell more RVs, which is certainly a goal of all of ours. They want to contribute to selling the RV industry to the next generation of talent as an incredible career path and ensuring that it remains so. So at the heart of it, the ELC recognizes how priceless our industry unity is and how it has brought us to this point, and it must remain a critical industry priority moving forward. So the next step in building unity is looking to the future, and I can assure you it's in good hands. I'd like to now pass things off to one of those hands, Samantha Rossi, RVIA Senior Manager of Government Affairs and ELC Staff Liaison. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm so pleased to be here today to represent the RV Industry Association. As Ryan mentioned, for decades, the RVIA has prioritized being a unifier for the wider industry. And we, as an association, are thrilled to take what we see as the next necessary step in maintaining that unity: the creation of the RV Industry Emerging Leaders Coalition. I realize that for many of you in this room, this may be the first you're hearing of the ELC. So who are we? We are over 24 leaders from across all segments of this industry. Individuals from manufacturers, suppliers, dealers, aftermarket, and campgrounds. Built on the same foundation that led to Go RVing, the ELC will introduce the next generation of industry leaders to each other to build relationships, help define our strategic direction, and carry this industry into the future. But it's not enough to just get all of us in a room together to make friends, although frankly, that's been an amazing part of working with this group. That's where our programming comes in. 3 pillars that arose out of the mission and the passion of this group: networking, giving back, and leadership development and mentorship. Let's start with networking. In March, we held our first leadership conference for the Coalition and the RVIA Board of Directors. Over 2 days, emerging and current industry leaders candidly discussed the biggest issues facing our industry. They shared their insights, and they built connections that didn't exist before. This was an opportunity to test out a concept. And with the success of that event, we're already thinking even bigger for next year. So in 2023, we'll be launching an all-industry leadership conference. So as they say on YouTube, watch this space, because I promise you will not want to miss that. On to leadership development and mentoring. A Deloitte survey found that 63% of millennials, 63%, report that their leadership skills aren't being fully developed. As a coalition, we want to develop industry-specific leadership programming to provide value to industry members by helping them grow and develop their skills to benefit this industry and their careers here. Continuing with our thread of unity, we want this programming to be focused on the entire industry so that folks can walk away with a holistic understanding of who we are, our key players, how all of our segments interact, and how to be successful here. And finally, giving back. Early in the life of this coalition, it became so clear that this group would not be content to just sit behind the scenes and generate good content or be consulted on some ideas once in a while. They wanted to take ownership of something in a tangible, visible way. They also wanted to give back to the community, both to the outdoors and the RVers who have given so much to us, and be a force for good. To that end, we created a team devoted to taking those desires and turning them into something concrete and actionable. Michaela Grimes, Director of Corporate and Community Impact at Lippert Components, and Mike Geddert, General Manager of Coachman Catalina at Forest River, stepped up immediately to lead that initiative. And yesterday, the fruit of their and this coalition's labor finally paid off, and over 400 RV industry members gathered to bring this idea to life. So I'd like to welcome Michaela and Mike to share with you what this industry accomplished yesterday as a unified force at Potato Creek State Park and what to expect from us in the future.
Thank you, Sam. We're very excited to be here on behalf of the Emerging Leaders Coalition to share with you our park initiative and also recap our launch event and everything that we accomplished at Potato Creek State Park yesterday. The mission statement of the Park Initiative program is partner within the RV industry to collaborate on park enhancement projects to improve the recreational experience for outdoor enthusiasts, RVers, and non-RVers alike. This mission began with the ELC as we were discussing corporate and industry social responsibility. As mentioned before, and representative of this industry, we immediately began on focusing on something actionable. We initially started off with discussions on trash cleanup programs, maybe cleaning up the waterways. Then it kind of hit us. We're the RV industry. We're not utilizing everything we're capable of. We have craftsmen, electricians, engineers, plumbers, planners, marketing, purchasing, sales teams, and more. We immediately started thinking bigger and wanted to do entire projects to enhance our parks and campgrounds. This led us to Potato Creek State Park, about 40 minutes from here, which I'm sure many of you in this room are familiar with. From there, we identified some potential projects, although the scope would quickly expand, and shared our plans with the coalition, who immediately supported us, and later the RVI Board of Directors when we presented to them in March. But even then, I don't think we realized how big this first event would become.
Good morning. For those of you that were there yesterday, you're probably surprised I'm standing here if you saw Mike driving the side-by-side. Yesterday, more than 400 volunteers from over 30 companies volunteered their time, tools, equipment, and materials to work on dozens of projects across a nearly 4,000-acre park, a park where more than 550,000 people go to visit each year. This group built an event stage to be used for educational field trips, complete with 21 benches, replaced an entire footbridge, restored a fish cleaning station, 6 bathrooms, cleared dozens of trail paths, and painted nearly 100 park traffic signs, all in one day. This morning, we actually have other volunteer crews out finishing up 4 remaining bathrooms. We all knew this industry is capable of incredible things when we come together, and yesterday we saw that in action firsthand. But obviously, in true RV fashion, we're not going to stop at one event, or even 2 events. In the future, we plan to hold 1 to 2 events per quarter across the country. How will we accomplish this? By relying on champions nationwide and providing the full support of the ELC. Is there a park in your area that needs help? We envision a future where you can reach out to us, propose a project, and we will help the industry come together just like yesterday to get it done. Because when this industry comes together, there's no stopping us. We want to thank the RVIA for continuing to help lead the way on industry unity, as well as all of you who supported us yesterday in making business a force for good. We couldn't have accomplished without all of you. We look forward to seeing you at future events.
Young people with energy. I love it. And thanks to Ryan, Samantha, Mike, and Michaela for their time this morning and for the event yesterday. New to the Power Breakfast is a presentation from RV Trader, a unit of Trader Interactive, a growing industry entity that has and continues to accumulate an immense data library regarding RV ownership, use, and the industry in general. Trader Interactive, as you might know, also owns Statistical Surveys. Presenting for RV Traders, Nicole Schanz. Nicole is the VP of OEM and Strategic Partnerships. Nicole has a 17-year history with Trader Interactive with a focus on recreational industries, including RV, power sports, and marine. She's an RV lover. She's one of RV Traders' resident experts of industry partners through company products, services, and data solutions. Please welcome to Elkhart, Nicole Schanz.
Thank you, Greg. All right, it is such an honor to be here this morning. I really appreciate the invite on behalf of RV Business. So today we will be talking about, or I will be talking about, what's happening in the current industry, as well as what's happening in inventory. How is RV Trader panning out? And then finally a little bit on what we expect to see in the future based on some of our data and insights. As Greg mentioned, I'm Nicole Schanz. I oversee our OEM and strategic partnerships for RV Trader. And just to kind of start out today, I wanted to tell you a little bit about RV Trader. So we've actually been in the industry for over 30 years, started as a print publication. Many of you probably remember that. But we've been in the digital space for over 20 years. Yes, prior to Google. Okay, so we've been in space for a really long time. And we have over 2.7 million unique visitors utilizing our sites every single day. And what that does for us is it allows us to have a very unique position within the industry to take the data and the insights and what's happening with those markets and relay that back to the industry. So we'll start out with what we're seeing currently in the industry. Now, 2020, we've all been talking about this for a couple of years now, a thing called COVID hit. But there's a lot of really good things that happened in the RV industry specifically when that happened, right? The Great American Outdoors Act that was spoken about a little bit earlier, huge for the industry. It's all about making sure that all those new people coming into the industry have a good experience. They can get out on the trails. They can find a campground to camp at. Work from home, right? Even Trader Interactive. We have a remote first environment now. It allows people to have a lot more flexibility. Back to consumers spending time with their friends and family. And then finally, unfortunately, the inventory shortages, which I'll talk a little bit in the next slides. So what's been happening with our overall RV market demand? I don't think there's anything on the slides that's going to completely surprise you. But you see 2020 and 2021. I'm going to start with that 12 million visitors. That happened in July of 2020. That was it was double that of where we were in July of 2019, okay? So over double. That obviously impacted those inventory shortages because consumers were shopping and then ultimately buying, which is what we want. But I want to focus on that bottom line, that black line. That is 2019. And here at RV Trader, and I've kind of asked quite a few folks within the industry, what are you using as your baseline now, right? We cannot use 2020 and 2021 as our baseline years. So 2019. The good news here is that based on a 2019 baseline, consumer demand is still 31% higher than what it was in 2019. Inventory. I'm really happy to show this slide. We are seeing it, we're feeling it, we're seeing it on the dealer lots, we're seeing it on RV Trader. Wholesale shipments have finally gone over what the actual retail sales have been, giving consumers much more opportunity to have selections best fit for their particular families. And we're continuing to see that in 2022. So thank you, OEMs. We're excited to see that. I know the dealers are, as well as the consumers. Now, RV Business asked us to specifically talk about what's happening in the used space, right? There's not a lot of data and insights necessarily on that. And RV Trader has a very unique position in bringing some of that to the table. And what we're seeing is 15%, I'm going to start with new, 15% more inventory year over year on new inventory, which is great. But interestingly enough, 40% more used inventory year over year on RV Trader, which is huge, right? So when I saw that data point, I went, there's something more here. What else is going on? I'm curious. So I asked our data analytics team to look a little bit deeper. And what we found was that 36% of the used inventory that is being placed on RV Trader recently is the model years of 2019 and 2021. Now, that can allude to two different things, is what I believe. Number one, the thing that I don't want to have happen, and neither do any of you. We do not want to see consumers that purchased a unit over the last couple of years exiting the space, right? So it's all of our jobs to make sure that they're staying in the industry. Number two, it could be, and we hope that it is, that those consumers maybe bought something that maybe wasn't the right fit because the inventory levels were low, and maybe they're just trading up. That's what we're hoping. All right, used inventory does, and we have actually seen, used inventory today is 5% higher than that baseline of 2019. So I think we can, based on the data, say that there is no longer an inventory shortage in used inventory. All right, so a little bit more about what's happening in consumer demand on that used inventory. I'm going to start out by talking about consumer search behavior. There's a very, very good opportunity for us in this space. Of the 7.8 million consumers that are coming onto our site and doing a search for used inventory, now, if any of you use RV Trader, they're not necessarily doing a general broad search, right, in the stat. They're actually choosing used inventory in that filter. If they think they know what they want, they're choosing that used inventory filter. Only 2.5% of those consumers are flipping over and looking for a new unit, okay? On the flip side of that, consumers that start out looking for a new unit, thinking, yes, this is what I want a new unit, about 16% of those flip over and look for a used unit. This is a really, really unique opportunity for both OEMs as well as dealers to, get in front of that consumer. If you want them to buy new, tell them why, right? Used units aren't that much more, right? So you have this very unique opportunity in the space in your digital marketing strategies. All right, also on RV Trader, what we're seeing in terms of consumer demand and interest, right, is that about 5 minutes in, we're seeing about 20% of consumers submitting a lead. If we know anything about the consumer buying process and that funnel, they're definitely interested, right? Those are low funnel shoppers. They are definitely knowing what they're wanting, and they're finding that unit, they're submitting that lead to that dealer, and they're moving on and being excited to buy that unit. Now, 65% of consumers are spending about 30 minutes on our site, looking at photos, videos, interacting, reading those descriptions. And it goes back to that merchandising is really, really important when you're providing a digital presence for your inventory. What's the most popular types of units? I don't think this will come as a surprise to you. For towables, it is travel trailers. We did see an increase in travel trailer interest between Q4 and Q1 of this year, as well as Class A is seeing a little bit of an increase. I don't think that's a huge surprise to you guys, but I do have a good stat coming up next that might surprise you. So again, based on all of our history and data, we keep track of a lot of this over the years and are watching these trends. One thing we're seeing is a bit of a shift in demand, right? So Class A popularity is actually showing a slight decline year after year in terms of overall lead volume on RV Trader. Same goes for what's happening with travel trailers. So travel trailers saw a really huge spike over COVID. One would maybe assume that maybe it's all those families that were getting into RVing as a first time. Maybe they have an SUV, they needed a lighter travel trailer that they could pull behind because there's also an inventory crisis in trucks, right? So it's hard to go buy that fifth wheel and the truck that you can't get. But what we are starting to see is that travel trailers are getting back to kind of the new, the normal kind of that baseline of 2019 prior. Now, Class Cs and fifth wheels are actually showing increases. So this is an area of opportunity for everyone as you're thinking about what to manufacture potentially, or what dealers are stocking on their lots. We're seeing a rise of about 2.5% on Class Cs and a rise of fifth wheels. So what we expect to see moving on is that Class Cs and fifth wheels will likely continue to grow in popularity. This is RV Trader's lead volume predictions, about 28% in Class A's, 25% in travel trailers, 20% in Class Cs, and 15% in fifth wheels. So what are the key takeaways today? Number one, inventory shortages, I hope, are behind us. We truly hope that we have the opportunity to give consumers lots of options as they're searching for their next unit to go out and camp and explore the great outdoors. But what it does also mean is that we all have to keep in mind that a great digital presence is really, really important. We need to use data and insights to make good strategic decisions as we move forward, and keep an eye on maybe those Class C's and fifth wheel units. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those after today's breakfast. We have tons of information, and I'm happy to share. So feel free to contact me directly, nicole.shantz@traderinteractive.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicole. And I'm sure that many of you, like I, found nuggets of interesting data that can be used and dug further into to help our business decision in the days ahead. Next up is a well-known and impressive leader in our industry, Toby O'Rourke, President and CEO of Campgrounds of America, the world's largest system of private campgrounds with over 525 franchised and company-owned locations across North America. Toby's career at KOA has been nothing short of spectacular, as she has used her expertise in brand management and her leadership skills through an extremely aggressive period of growth. She serves the industry as a member of RVA Board of Directors, the Advisory Council for Care Camps, and as a member of the Outdoor CEO Council. Please extend a gracious greeting to Toby O'Rourke.
Well, oh, there we go. Thank you for the invitation. This is such a great event. Sherman, I think if it gets any bigger, you're going to have to get Notre Dame Stadium to hold everybody, bursting at the seams. But there's been so many positive relationship building between the RV industry and campgrounds as a result specifically of this breakfast. Over the past year, RVIA has formed a campground task force. I sit on that task force alongside other members of campgrounds and, of course, RV industry leaders, and we work together to try to solve problems for the campground industry. I've been honored to be on the RVIA board and learn more about your priorities and then how that can affect our business and vice versa. And I also think this breakfast has helped raise the visibility and awareness of the Care Camps organization in recent years specifically. And many of your organizations are participating now beyond KOA, which is great. And Jen Mercer, who's here, shares that they have raised $2.2 million last year to help 33,000 children and families with cancer, which is quite remarkable. So thank you for that. And there's definitely a lot more need out there that we can feel. But I need my clicker. Here we go. But I'd also like to thank you for partnership for 60 years with our brand specifically. This is actually KOA's 60th anniversary. We were founded in 1962. This is what is believed to be the first camping family. So you can see we've been in good partnership with the RV industry for a long, long time. And our founder saw people traveling to the Seattle World's Fair in Billings, Montana, where we're still headquartered, and invited people onto his land to camp, and thus was the foundations of KOA. So thank you for your partnership with our brand for all of these years. When I spoke at my convention in November, I introduced this concept that we were in the midst of an inflection point. And I wanted to talk about it today because this doesn't just apply to KOA. This applies to our whole outdoor hospitality industry, from OEMs to suppliers, dealers, and campgrounds. And what an inflection point is an event that affects the progress of a company, an industry, or a sector, even a geopolitical situation. And it's a catalyst for change. It comes about by external factors. So that could be economic impacts, environmental factors, technology disruption, competition. And the thing about an inflection point is that you have to respond. You either respond effectively and your business weathers that storm and moves forward, or you can face decline. But the change is inevitable, and we're in the midst of that right now. The big external factor which propelled us into this inflection point was, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. So obviously we all adjusted our business operations. We've been facing supply chain issues, labor shortages, et cetera. But the positive outcome of the COVID-19 pandemic was it brought all this new interest in camping and RVing. And I think we can all rally behind this and be very excited that last year, I believe camping is truly leading the travel industry. 40% of leisure trips in 2021 involved camping. And over half of people that traveled, 53%, went camping. This is phenomenal, and it's time for us to really assert our leadership position in the travel industry because we are a formidable segment of travel. 57 million households camped last year. That's an 18% increase over what we saw in 2020, I guess that's what that should say. We also saw a huge influx of new campers. 19.1 million new campers have started camping between 2020 and 2021. 19 million. So typically in an average year, we see like 1.5 million to 3 million new camping households. Last year, there were 9 million new camping households. That just shows you what a significant event we're in the midst of right now. And with that, brought a lot of new people into RVing. 6.2 million new RVing households. And that data we just saw was phenomenal, really helped reflect that. There's a lot of enthusiasm to keep camping, and that's what I get asked a lot, is this going to continue? Well, we project from our research that there's going to be a 7% increase in camping households this year. 61.3 million households are projected to camp in 2022. Now, we've been talking about the economy all day. I'll tell you how our business is doing. Last year was our that slide just looks a little screwed up, so let me explain it to you in the transition. So look at the moon. That's talking about occupancy and nights. We're up 3.9% over last year. So we're definitely holding our own against our best year in history. Registrations is 13% up over last year. That's revenue. We're up 13%. And then 10.5% is advanced deposits. That's actually cash in hand on future camping, 10.5% up over where it was this time last year. Now, we obviously have a lot of other things coming at us, like we've been talking about, gas prices and inflation. So I want to talk about what we're seeing from an impact there. Right now, what we're calling the gas price tolerance, if you will, is $4.72 for campers. They say that's the level on average, where they, nationwide average, where they would affect their camping behavior and make changes. I put a few other segments in this slide. If you look at those people who are planning to camp for the first time this year, they're saying they'll go all the way up to $5. They're not going to affect their They're not going to affect their camping plans unless it's up over $5. Now, what's interesting is when we did this research in April, it was actually lower. It was around $4.60. So that's increased over the past month. I think even though gas prices are increasing, people are getting closer and closer to summer, and they're like, yeah, no, we're still going to go out and camp. 30% say if gas prices continue to increase, they're going to take fewer camping trips. 30% say they'll camp closer to home. But a full third of people say they are not going to change their camping plans, which is really positive. In terms of inflation, very similar numbers. About a third saying they probably will take fewer trips. They're going to camp closer to home. 16% say they're going to spend less while they're camping. And a quarter of people say they're not going to change their camping plans. Now, traditionally at KOA, we see our business still weather really well through a recession. And the reality is because while our costs are increasing, so is everybody else's. Air travel has increased 40% since January. It's anticipated to go up another 10% this month. People are going to be swapping out their trips, other leisure trips they've had planned, with camping. In fact, 37% say they plan to do exactly that. So there's still going to be high demand for camping, and it's a really good opportunity for us to keep people in the activity while we're kind of weathering through these weird economic conditions. So our inflection point's a little more complicated, if we go back to that. A lot of new people camping, but we are facing some economic pressures. And what I wanted, we have to make those changes, as I said, because we're in this inflection point, and we know what needs to be done to accommodate all these new campers. We need to increase the quantity of campsites. We've all been talking about this, and it's true. 25% had difficulty booking an RV site in the past couple of months. And 44% of people told us they actually camped less last year because of overcrowding. Now, campground owners are responding. Research by RVIC says that 33% of campground owners added sites last year. But it can be challenging. I'm going to talk about that here in a few minutes. We also know we need to invest in improving the experience while camping, so we keep people camping. We don't want those people selling those RVs. We want them to keep going out and camping. And we know people are working while they camp. 50% of Americans work while they're camping. Over half of people say Wi-Fi is extremely important to their camping experience. It's just a reality. But they're only rating Wi-Fi quality as good a quarter of the time. Having good quality Wi-Fi in a campground is extremely difficult and it's extremely expensive. This is a big challenge for our industry. But I like to think that Wi-Fi is a utility. We need to invest in it just as much as we invest in sewer, for example. And then also we're looking at making campgrounds EV ready. You know, the government is projecting 50% of auto sales to be EV by 2030. We know people are going to be showing up on our tent sites and our cabins. They're going to be towing, they're going to be driving electric vehicles. 25% of campers say they plan to buy an EV in the next 2 to 3 years. And we know that you guys are building electric RVs. So we're mobilizing and getting ready. The reality is you can't just plug into our 50 amp pedestals. That's not even approved by National Electric Code for use that way. We need to get level 2 chargers on campgrounds, but there's a whole lot of work to be done there. So all those things being said, I wanted to take a few minutes to paint a more realistic picture of the campground landscape for you, because I don't think we've really talked about this much. RV Industry Association did some great research this year that showed there's 27,000 campgrounds, and that's public and private. Of that, 12,000 are privately owned. Of that, only 3% of campgrounds are owned by the largest institutional REITs and what we own at Campgrounds of America. That means that 97% of campgrounds are owned by small business owners and families. This truly is, you know, an entrepreneurial enterprise. And the reason I paint this landscape today is because I'm in a lot of meetings where people are like, why can't the RV or the campground industry respond quickly? Why can't you add more sites? Why can't you add EV chargers? And that's the reality, is it's a very unconsolidated marketplace. And so getting messaging and communications out can be very challenging. And I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that. Adding sites can be expensive and time intensive. So we're talking about costs affecting your business. I want to talk about how costs affecting those small business owners. It's just a reality. Adding sites to an existing campgrounds costs between $17,000 to $18,000 per site. That's gone up $5,000 in recent years due to material costs, but that's how much it costs to add a site to an existing campground. If you're building new campgrounds, there's a lot of building going on, taking all-in costs, you know, everything from your recreation, everything you're adding into that. It's around $50,000 a site is what it costs to build a campground. And it takes a long time. Right now, when we purchase land, we estimate 3 to 4 years from purchase of that land to when that campground opens. And a lot of that has to do with the entitlement process, which can be very lengthy and very difficult. So I don't want to be a downer in this presentation, but I wanted to paint a little bit of a picture about what our industry is facing. And I think there's some really important ways we can continue to partner together and even do more to help address some of these challenges for these small business owners. If we're talking specifically about the time and the entitlement process, one of the outcomes of the task force has been let's mobilize together to tell our story about what an RV park is, what a campground is. You know, it's not a mobile home park. It has a big economic impact on a community. In fact, our research suggests that $44 billion in local communities were spent by campers last year. This is how it breaks down per day when a camper comes into a community. On average, $113 are spent in the United States per day by camping household in a community. That jumps even higher when we look at the eastern part of the United States. And those new campers, those new RVers, they're out for the first time, they're spending quite a bit more, actually on average in a community. That's a really powerful story that we can work together to tell to help speed the approval process through for campgrounds more quickly. And then addressing the cost issue, there's a lot of money that's available for public campground development, and there's some available for private campgrounds. And I think I'd really love some help in getting access to grants and funding for small business owners that own campgrounds. This can help fuel site expansion, recreation development in rural areas, improving that important broadband coverage, and finally in the EV charging infrastructure. There's a lot of money that's opening up, and I think collectively we can advocate for those dollars to be expanded into these small business owners' hands. But I also think we can get very creative and think about even private partnership opportunities to help fuel the objectives we all have about better serving the camping guest. We want to get these people on our parks, give them a good experience, keep them camping, so when they are comfortable, they'll continue to upgrade their RVs, purchase new ones, and we'll be able to attract even more people into camping. So looking forward to the conversations and the partnership, and thank you again for allowing us to speak this morning. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Toby. What a data-filled presentation and information from our user base. And I might add that we've had a number of presenters with data. This event is being live fed on the internet. It's housed on the RV business, whatever that internet thing is. Where they show videos and stuff, you know what I mean? YouTube, yeah, there it goes. That was a test, okay? And I failed, by the way. So anyway, it is housed on YouTube. We will post that again. Quit laughing at me, Rick. We will post that again, a link, probably not tomorrow, but maybe. So if you want to access that, you can see all these presentations again and get the data from there. So at any rate, as we close the program or get close to it, the highlight of the program, the dealer panel, I would like to call on Nathan Hart, co-owner of Walnut Ridge RV Sales and Campground in Newcastle, Indiana. Nathan currently serves as vice chairman of RVDA and is speaking today in that role. Nathan's RV involvement, besides his leadership role at RVDA, includes a dealership and campground in Indiana, as well as partnership in 2 additional dealerships in southern states. Please welcome Nathan Hart.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hart, as Greg said, with Walnut Ridge Family RV Sales in Newcastle, Indiana, and Primo RV Superstores in Louisiana. Phil Ingracia, RVDA president, could not be here today, so he asked that I step in for him. And being that I'm the dealer in Indiana, that's why he chose me. I'm honored to serve RVDA as the first vice chairman, and I can assure you that the RVDA board shares a deep commitment in this industry and our mutual customers. We appreciate the invitation from RV Business to be a part of the Power Breakfast, and we appreciate everything every one of you do in this room for dealers across the country. There are just over 2,700 RV dealership rooftops in the US, and these dealerships generate over $26 billion in annual revenue. And it's interesting that that number is up over 80% in the last 10 years. America's RV dealerships employ 49,000 employees with an annual payroll of $2.5 billion. And as you'll hear from our dealer panel next, collectively, dealerships across the country are investing millions of dollars in infrastructure, facility upgrades, new service centers, new parts centers, modernization of sales lots, and things you don't see, like improved dealership management software, IT upgrades, training centers, call centers, marketing departments, and of course, new employees to better serve our dynamic industry and our customers. As dealers and manufacturers and suppliers, I think we can all agree that we need to build on the unprecedented amount of new RVers that have entered the RV industry over the course of the last few years and continue to reach out to new customers who have yet to experience camping or travel in an RV. That's why RVDA is pleased to be working with our industry partners to improve our ability to service customers after the sale through measuring and enhancing our industry's repair event cycle time, or RECT. I've asked several people about RECT on the manufacturing side, and they look at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. So RECT is the amount of time a repair order is created to the time that it is closed. And our goal as an industry with RVIA and RVDA is to reduce that amount of time, and we're working really hard to make that happen. RVDA is tracking RECT progress, and we appreciate the alliances between manufacturers and suppliers and distributors that are improving the availability of service repair parts so we can keep our customers on the road and enjoying their travel trailers, fifth wheels, and motorhomes. At the dealer level, with the help of RVDA's RV Learning Center, dealerships are working and training new employees, frontline employees, most importantly, in our dealerships through service advisors, parts managers, service managers, through education and training programs and certification programs, so we can more effectively run our fixed operations departments. RVDA also supports the RV Technical Institute right here in Elkhart as we all develop the next generation of RV service technicians. RVDA, along with RVIA, are leaders in the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, ensuring that our customers will have access to public lands on both federal and state levels. And one last thing, RVDA holds our annual convention every year in Las Vegas during the month of November. It's a premier educational and training networking event that dealerships from all over North America can attend. And we hear from the best and brightest minds in the industry, keynote speakers that teach dealerships how to run their dealerships more effectively, and leadership. So if anyone in this room knows a dealership that has outgrown their current systems or processes, or you think might benefit from learning how to run more efficiently, please encourage them to attend RVDA. And I promise that when they return back to the dealerships, they will have the knowledge and the tools that they need to succeed and service our customers better. So again, thanks to Sherm and Greg and everyone at RV Business for organizing this event. By sharing information and knowledge, we are truly a better and more united industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. And we appreciate you being here in Phil's absence. We would appreciate you being here even if Phil was here. Okay, but anyway, do appreciate it. Our last event today is a dealer panel. Our MCs for the panel are Bob Parrish, VP of National Accounts for Wells Fargo Commercial Distribution Finance, as well as being a former chairman of RVIA. He serves along with Sherm Goldenberg, longtime publisher of RV Business and Woodall's Campground magazines. So if those two will head this way. I'm going to introduce the dealers. As I do, please come forward and find a seat up here. We'll supply you with a microphone. In alphabetical order by last name, the gentleman will take the stage. First, I would like to introduce Loren Baidas, President of General RV. General RV is among the nation's premier RV dealers and currently operates 14 dealerships with more than 500 service bays. Opened by the Baidas family in 1962, they continue to help families make lifelong memories. General RV also operates a facility just down the street here in Elkhart. Loren's work philosophy is simply be better. Next is Jeff Hirsch, president of Campers Inn RV, headquartered in Jacksonville, Florida. Campers Inn has grown to over 30 dealership locations in the past few years, employing Jeff's growth strategy. Jeff is a longtime servant to the industry, serving as the only RVDA chairman that served for 2 consecutive years, and he also has participated in a long list of industry outreaches over his career, and Campers Inn also operates a facility in Elkhart. Third, Jarrod McGhee, CEO of Funtown RV, headquartered in Cleburne, Texas. Since its inception, Jarrod has employed innovative ideas to grow into one of the largest, if not the largest, towable dealerships in the country. Funtown operates from 12 locations in the Southwest and Midwest, and also operates a facility in Elkhart. Last and certainly not least, we welcome Mike Pearo, president of family-owned Hilltop Camper and RV in Brainerd, Minnesota, along with 3 additional locations in Minnesota. This family-owned dealership began in 1951 and is now a 3rd-generation company. No easy feat. In addition to operating the dealership, Mike has served the industry through his involvement in RVDA, where he currently serves as chairman through 2022. Sherman, Bob, it's all yours.
Is this working? What makes the microphone work? Oh, it's working. Speak into it?
Yeah.
Bob and I have been doing this for a few years. We're personal friends, but somehow we got into this routine, and come
Yeah,
again.
we still don't know where to
You
stand.
think
We
I
haven't
would
figured
stand
that
out
out
here? Okay. So, dealer panel. We'll start out. We choreographed this, but so it goes. Let's start out by stating the obvious. The fact that no one on this dealer panel, or in this room for that matter, has ever seen anything like the last 2 years. Ever. With challenging pandemic-related headwinds, and I won't go through them, on one hand, yet record shipments and financial returns on the other. So what's your take on this whole 2-year episode? I mean, how do you explain it? What are your takeaways on this pandemic, for lack of a better name? What can we learn from this, if anything? Any of you?
I'll start by saying, yeah, obviously the last 2 years have been unpredictable, to say the least. I think the people that were the most prepared had good core business philosophies and great employees and structure. I think had the most success going through it. We went from kind of planning out a year to planning out a day in a week, and then back to now a month and maybe even a quarter today. So we've seen that transition over the last 2 years, but that's a lot of what we saw over 2 years.
I remember the first weeks of the pandemic when all you could see is headlines saying the world was coming to an end. So we had our situation room going on every day, trying to determine how we're going to go ahead and meet these challenges head on. And then 3 weeks later, we saw the e-leads skyrocket. And now we're trying to figure out how we're going to go and meet the demand. So from that point forward, we're trying to determine how these dealerships are going to be able to react from a personnel standpoint, from a financial standpoint, technology, in order to meet these new customers coming into the marketplace.
Well, it's good to be back in my second home, Elkhart, here, and seeing all my friends. And one of the speakers earlier said something about a RV brunch. Let's do a RV power happy hour maybe next year. You might get a few better ideas out of it. All right. Well, early in the morning, guys. Things are never as good or as bad as they seem in the moment. So April 2020, everybody's running around, the sky's falling, and it's going to be bad. And yeah, it get bad for a little while, and it turned around, got good real quick again. And it's important to remember when things were real good in 2021, everybody's like, we're going to build 700,000 units a year because this thing's going to keep going up forever and ever. Well, things don't go down constantly or up constantly. It kind of moves along. And I think it's hard to do it in a moment, but us leaders need to remember there's always going to be events like COVID and the housing crisis and 9/11. It just happens every so often. Our industry's turned down every 10 years or so, but it always comes back stronger. If you're measuring things in months and weeks and days, you're not going to be very happy ever. But if you're stepping back and looking at things in years and 2 years and 3 years, you realize we have a great industry, and we'll get through whatever bump we have in front of us. And there's a pretty big bump right now. There's a lot of holding yards sitting around this town right now full of inventory. I'm sure need a home. We'll get through that too. But we're in the right industry. We've got great people to work with, and if you keep that in mind, and when we hit these bumps, we'll make it to the next one.
Yeah, just to add to that, to answer your question, how do you explain it? I don't think you can. I mean, there's no way to explain it. It was totally unforeseen, and like Jeff said, I mean, we went from just meeting every day to try to figure out how are we going to keep all these employees, to meeting every day to figure out how do we get more employees, to provide the service we need to provide, and how do we get more units. And I mean, it just went from one issue of what are we going to do with all these units to how do we get more units. And the industry continues to see challenges. I was up visiting the Canadian dealers just a few weeks ago, and they can't get units across the border. They've got a whole different issue than us U.S. dealers. And I have no doubt that this industry will figure out a way to get those units across the border and help them out and keep their dealerships going. So it's just it's great to see the way the industry reacted, and everybody pulled together and got it done.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps one of the positive byproducts is a whole new type of buyer that's coming out there. I mean, we're hearing things like these newbies are not really dialed into the industry so much as they're adventurous. They're looking to do other things. We heard from Toby from KOA that they like to work from the road, right? And they might like to boondock. Is that what you're seeing in your dealerships? What does that new buyer look like from your eyes?
Well, you're seeing a lot of different things out there. That new buyer, first of all, needs an app to do anything, whether it's to find a gas station or, I mean, they're not going to have a toolbox in the back of their truck. They're not going to fix anything themselves. And that's something we're going to have to adjust to. We're going to have to raise our quality up to a point where they're getting what they expect. Unfortunately, they think they're buying a car. So, in 1980, if you bought a car and you slammed the door and the window handle fell off, you didn't think nothing of it. But if you did that today, you'd be freaked out because that window handle fell off. Well, most of these new buyers have never bought the car that the window handle fell off before, so they don't know how to fix that kind of stuff. They don't know how to even think about that. They'll call you up in the middle of the night and want you to run out to the campground and fix their air conditioner for it. They can find your phone number online. So, I mean, it's a different generation that we're helping. The new buyers, they all come in, they want a 40-foot long travel trailer that weighs 3,000 pounds and it's got 12 slides on it and it's solar powered, but you can't do that. So setting their expectations levels is a big part of it. And as a dealer group, we have to be better at it. We have to be careful with our advertising. We don't want people thinking they're buying homes. You're not buying a home and you're not buying a car. You're buying a home that goes down a road. So any house you've ever had, put that on the wheels and drag it down the street and see how many problems you're going to have with it. But that's kind of what I'm seeing. That a lot of the newer buyers really feel like they're buying a car, buying an automobile. And if we don't raise our quality levels and lower their expectations, we're going to have a lot of upset people that bought one RV and never bought another one.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good point. And, everybody thinks of these new buyers as this young new group coming in, but I was on the phone with a couple that's, they're in their 70s. They bought their first motorhome ever. It was a 2021 used Class C motorhome, and the reason I was on the phone with them is we survey all our customers, and they rated our service department poor. And I thought, well, you know, what did we do? So I called these guys, and the reason they rated our service department poor is because we replaced the radio that didn't work in the unit, and we forgot to hook up the USB port charger. And I thought there was going to be a lot more to the story. I said, well, what else? You know, and well, that was about it. And I thought, well, the air conditioner worked, the furnace worked. I mean, all these other appliances worked, but they were upset because they couldn't plug in their Apple CarPlay. And they felt that, you know, we didn't think they needed their Apple CarPlay because they were in their 70s. But we just forgot.
So there's no question that the pandemic created a whole new buyer for this industry. I read a book years ago. It was The Last Boy in the Woods. And it was about the generation coming up having a nature deficit and whether or not they would be able to go ahead and adopt outdoors, fishing, boating, camping, right? And what the pandemic did is that it brought families out of the living room on their cell phones, video games, and back to nature. And we're very fortunate as an industry to have this whole new group of buyers that have come into the marketplace that has embraced nature, and the vessel they use to get there is a recreational vehicle.
Yeah, and I think the way that they're using is significantly different than pre-pandemic. Like we saw in some of the other speakers, we're seeing a lot more dry camping. We're seeing, you know, the uses of working from their RV or using it for other purposes with their business. So we're seeing not just, like you say, young buyers, but a wide breadth of buyers that are coming into the marketplace and creating lots of new challenges for us.
Okay. Is it working? Yeah, it's working. So how do I, you know, I'll condense our next question into something you've already partly touched on, which is how do we keep these people? How best does the industry go about keeping this wave of new buyers in campers? As Toby was telling us, I mean, the KOA numbers were ungodly. I mean, unbelievable. How best, and maybe this bleeds into a conversation of RECT to a tad, how do we keep them? That's what a lot of us want to know.
Well, we're going to have to change. First thing we're going to have to do is quit being all sales oriented. I mean, I'm a sales guy at heart, and I hate even saying that. But, you know, basically all of our pay plans, all of our leadership, all the promotions, and all of our companies, stores, you guys that are suppliers, manufacturers, it's all built around the sales department. We're going to start taking dollars out of the sales department and start putting it over in customer service, call centers, interactive help, training. It needs to happen. And, you know, it's hard fighting that greed off where you just want to do more and more and more and more. I think last year there was 2,350 RV dealerships that registered at least one new RV. Out of that, maybe 600 of those sold more than 250 units. Over half of them didn't even sell 120. So that's less than 10 units a year. So you got a lot of little small dealerships who are not doing a lot of business, who don't have the money to put into call centers, having 24-hour help, backing the people up, being able to stand behind the product, don't have the relationships up here to make things right for customers. I mean, us guys here, Camping World RV Retailer, we're only 35% of the retail sales that happen in the country. So we can affect change, but it has to be a whole industry. And it's really hard for that small guy with 2 service bays and sells 10 units a month to actually treat that customer the way they want to be treated on the type of purchase that they're making. It's a big ticket item and they're expecting quality service. If we want to keep these customers, service and quality is where it's all at.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think you're spot on. I think we need to start leveraging technology
to be able to give us the ability to take care of these customers, to communicate with them, to be able to get them in and out, scheduling for service, communication between us and the manufacturers on warranty, on parts, on shipping. You know, you can order a pizza right now and you can follow it on your app from the point of when they're producing it, when it's in the oven, and you can follow the car all the way to your house. So there's technologies out there that we need to start utilizing, looking into as an industry to be able to communicate better with our consumer, because that's what they want. That's what they expect.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I mean, you can watch your pizza come all the way to your house, and when we're not getting back to them to let them know where their RV is, you know, they're getting upset, they're getting frustrated, and we're finding that you know, we're starting to see a shift in our dealership with, you know, the technicians and the service people are starting to be the ones that make more money than the salespeople because they're becoming more and more valuable. It's harder and harder to find technicians, and to your point, we've always set up our stores to be sales machines, and we've developed sales BDCs, or internet sales as some people call them. What we've done is we've taken that same formula and set up a service BDC. So now all the service leads and inquiries go through this team to make sure that they get communicated to properly the first time and then get directed through our dealership properly. But it's going to take the entire industry, and it's fun to see the momentum that RECT is getting from a dealership standpoint, and through RVDA from a manufacturer and supplier standpoint through RVIA, because it's going to take us dealers to fix our problems and our bottlenecks, and the manufacturers and suppliers to work on theirs. And if we're working on it together at the same time, there'll be a really good end result to our end users.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with all of you on this. You know, it's a multifaceted problem. It's going to take, you know, all stakeholders in the industry in order to get together and discuss how we mutually can go ahead and serve the needs of the consumer. The consumer today has high expectations because their standards have been elevated by other products and services that they buy. And when they see the RV industry, we're antiquated compared to those industries. So we're going to have to go ahead and advance in technology. We need, as dealers, to go ahead and align with manufacturers and suppliers' software systems so that they can talk to each other, so that we can better communicate and actually give better information to our consumer. Today, I hate to say it, but we put our service advisors in a very difficult situation. Our service advisors turn, all right, over when I say we have a lot of attrition there because we're asking them to go ahead and defend the industry. We should never ever put people in a position where they have to defend an industry. So technology and being able to go ahead and communicate with the manufacturing suppliers is critical to the future.
Thank you. Did it last time too. Sorry about that. So shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about inflation. It seems like since the pandemic started, we've been dealing with it as an industry. And now as the market space is probably starting to normalize, we continue to deal with it. Share with us some of the key impacts, if you will, you know, what it's meant, and what do you think it does to our industry tomorrow?
You ready, Mike?
Well, one thing that we've seen is, you know, our industry's always been the affordable way to travel. And one thing that concerns me is that entry-level travel trailer for the family that at one time was $13,995, $14,995 is now $24,995. You know, it's just increased that entry-level point that's starting to price some families and young families out of the market. And obviously that's a bit of a scary thing. That was something that our industry really grew from, is the ability to get into it at a very, you know, low price. And so it does concern me that the pricing has gone up as much as it has with inflation.
I think you couple that with rising interest rates and other pressures of rising fuel costs, rising food costs for a family. You get to the point where their monthly budget is being stretched, and we get away from that. And that's not just the trailers, that's entry-level Class Cs, that's entry-level Class As, which are now over $100,000. You start looking at that, we're going to have to really sit back down and figure out price points again as the market starts to more normalize now that inventory levels are getting back to a more normalized area. And that's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to figure out because we're definitely missing that buyer today.
I know the cost of doing business is going up for sure, right? So, we haven't had floor plan interest. All right, so now obviously we have interest costs that are raising our cost of doing business. Everywhere we look, we have rising costs in personnel, marketing. So dealers' expenses are skyrocketing. And, some of my concern is that there's only so much elasticity in the marketplace. The consumer purchasing power is going down. All right. Every time they have to go ahead and put, gas in their tank, go to the grocery store and buy food, that disposable income is diminishing. And then you have the inflationary pressures of our products, and there's going to be a gap. And there's going to be fewer people that are going to be able to go ahead and access the vehicles that they want. Doesn't mean they don't buy an RV. Maybe they end up buying pre-owned, and maybe that's the reason why we're seeing on RV Trader, a ramp up in looks to used, because they still want to camp, but they still want to do it affordably.
Well, we got to learn to fight greed off, guys. I mean, there's a lot of people got real greedy in the last couple of years. A lot of this inflation has nothing to do with actual inflation. It's a lot of people making money. In fact, this male put their hands over lip or tears over there. Stop telling him we're going to produce 750,000 RVs this year. He's got to build 18 new plants. We're only going to retail 450, 500,000 RVs this year. Y'all don't want to be shipping them to us on a one turn. But when these guys hear these big numbers, y'all been chomping out here at all these meetings that we're going to do this much and that much, and everybody's got to retool, everybody's got to build new buildings, everybody's got to figure out how to hire more people. Well, it's good, but it's not as good as you think it is. We just had the biggest year we've ever had. We retailed 500 to 550,000 units. If you're a towable dealer, it was 550,000 more motorized. And we got a little greedy, and the dealer base did too. There's a lot of dealers out there taking advantage of that low inventory level, and they were selling stuff to people at prices that really wasn't a fair price to the consumer just because the market will allow them to do it. There's a fair markup and a fair amount of money you can make with your consumer. You need to find that happy zone because you want to trade that customer out every 18 months, every 24 months. And it's hard to do that in the moment when you don't have anything left on the lot, 2 or 3 units. And I want MSRP for it. We should have never been selling stuff for that much. The other thing is we got to lean this industry out. We got to get the cost of sales down. My inventory that I PDI in Indiana cost me 25 cents on the dollar to do the same work if I did it in Texas. Between the time, the interest I'll be spending, all the people's hands it has to touch to go through to get that same unit fixed. 50% of the work, warranty work I do on units, I don't know about the other guys up here, it's all pre-sale problems. It's problems that came from the factory. So if I can do it for 25 cents on the dollar, just think what you guys could do by slowing this stuff down and building these things without the problems in it from the get-go. You'll be able to take the cost of the unit down. You get the cost of sales down, we can fight inflation off. Luckily, our industry hasn't had very much inflation over the last 15 years I've been in it. We'll overcome the inflation we have now, but it's time to tamp this down and understand that if the average fifth wheel now sells for 75,000, the number one price group used to be 55,000. Last year, 1 year ago, it was 55,000. The travel trailer, number one price group right now, 30 to 35,000. A year ago, it was 20 to 25,000. Yeah, things were supposed to go up. But 40% invoice on average, I think, is what we're all paying up here more than we were paying a year ago. That's too much, too fast.
We've got one more question, Bob and I, and I call it the $64,000 question, but I don't know that most of the room would know what that meant anymore. That's an old illusion. But here's the question. I'll read it. Everything else aside, gentlemen, how do you see things playing out for the industry over the next couple of years? Keeping in mind that a number of intelligence sources, including RVIA's forecaster, ITR Economics, are predicting calm waters despite the current headwinds, and the March Stats Surveys report indicating that RV retail sales activity was off somewhat through the first quarter of the year. How do you see this thing playing out over the next year or two, and then we're done?
Well, I'd agree that, we've brought in a lot of new buyers. We're gonna keep some of those buyers, a lot of those buyers. We're also shined a big spotlight on the industry, so which is good. Now it's a more well-known form of travel. It's mainstream, so I see our industry benefiting from the last couple years for years to come. So inflation is gone up, or inflation is a problem, but it's also a problem for the rest of the world as well. So that, as Toby said, the airline travel's gone, up 40%, and other forms of travel have gone up as well. So we're still going to be that affordable way to travel. We're just better known now. So I do see that, we're going to see some steady growth over the next few years.
Well, I think it's going to be a little choppy waters coming up here. We've got a lot of people, we've got to trade out of units that bought the wrong unit, and they paid a premium for them. So, the average unit before we went into COVID was turning in about 18 to 24 months was a trade cycle. You're going to have a lot of people wanting to trade quicker than that. They have loans on them. They didn't get in the principal as quick. So you're going to have some buyers coming in that owe way more than they should on a unit that probably wasn't the right unit because they didn't have the selection, or quite frankly, our sales staff's got lazy. I guarantee you, if you talk to all of us guys up here about that, they weren't listening to the customer's needs and putting them in the exact right unit. They were too busy running out there grabbing that next customer coming in because that's how busy we were. So there's a lot of people that have the wrong floor plan, which is the main reason you buy an RV is because what floor plan it is. So over the next year or two, we're going to have to trade some people out of some units that are in too much, had the wrong floor plans, people that probably didn't get the try what kind of walkthrough to be taught how to use the unit right. A lot of frustrations from those first-time buyers, first-time RVers. And we're probably going to have to make up some ground with those people to keep them RVing instead of going, that first one didn't work out that well at all. I just want to get out of this deal. Well, maybe we can trade them into that second one, do a little better job on it, put them in the right floor plan, take care of their service needs a little bit better, and hang on to these folks.
I think I'll go back to what Jarrod said earlier, which is, I think we have some challenges in front of us today and in the months to come. Supply and demand are going in the opposite directions, and we're flipped from where we were a year ago. And I think we need to, as an industry, be smart and diligent and how many we are building on the wholesale side compared to what we're retailing. And right now, retail is softening, and it's going to continue for a while until inflation gets under control, until consumers feel better about the money that they have and how much that dollar is, and they can spend. I think we're going to see some choppy waters, and long term, we're going to be just fine. The industry's great; it's healthy. I think we've got. You look at this room full of hardworking, intelligent people. We'll figure it out as long as we communicate. And one of the things I think we've done as an industry over the last 2.5 years since the pandemic, I feel like we've become closer. I feel like we all communicate at a better, more frequent, and high level as to what we can do to impact the industry in a positive manner. And I think that comes from a dealer side and from the OEM side. So I think we've got some challenges. We got to talk about it. We got to communicate, and we'll figure it out. And there's brighter skies and better years to come in front of us. But all is good.
All right, I'll close this group by saying this. After we get through these choppy waters, all right, we're cyclical business. We know the challenges that we have ahead of us. I think our best years are ahead. And I've felt that my entire life. And I'm excited for the industry. I'm excited for OEMs and dealers and suppliers. And we just have to remember one thing. At the end of the day, our customers have to win. And collectively, we can help them get there.
Many thanks, gentlemen. Wise words from wise people. Thank you, Jeffrey. You bet. Thanks. That was wonderful. You know, there is no doubt that we are the RV industry. Somebody asked me this morning, what have I seen change over the years that I've been in it? Well, one of the changes is a lot of you weren't born yet when I started. But seriously, one of the changes is that we are now a mainstream industry in this country. And I can tell you in 1970, we were not a mainstream industry. Today we are. And that's thanks to leadership of a lot of people who are here today and those who are no longer with us. But we have become that. And we have dealerships like these gentlemen up here that have helped progress that as well. And we can all be proud of the fact that we are part of a mainstream American industry. My thanks to our sponsors once again. I don't want to forget them. I want my thanks to the organizing committee for their hard work. I specifically want to thank Judy Sheets, Larry Liebrick, and BJ Thompson for their hard work behind the scenes, making sure that this event was pulled off the way it was, and to the RVB staff. I thank all of you for coming to the RV Power Breakfast, supporting what has become a traditional event. Please take your time as you depart. Godspeed. Thank you.